Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Presentations. We have no presentations this evening, but we do have one delegate, and that delegate is Cassie Savage, representing Real Food First. This is item 2 on our agenda with respect to requests for proposals for vending and concession operations. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Casey Savage, Mayor Daw, respected councillors and city staff. It was 1 month ago today, approximately, that my Aurora neighbors and I stood before you with the support of some 700 signatures on a petition that we gathered in about 5 days and asked you to make a tough decision. The decision was to reconsider the sad and unhealthy status quo of our recreation center concessions and instead choose a path less traveled. A path with a few curves and bumps along the way, but ultimately a path that will lead to a healthier, more vital Aurora. As we gathered support, some naysayers said to us, "Oh, you can't change their minds, don't even bother, there's no point. They're just concessions." We disagreed. And last month, each and every one of you unanimously agreed that there's a gross disconnect between the town's mandate to promote health and physical activity and the junk and sugar dispensaries located in our centers of wellness. Each and every one of you agreed we can do better. We must do better. 55% real foods to nourish our community and kids. Junk food moved to less visible locations, out of sight, out of mind. Affordable, healthy options placed visibly up front where hands big and small can easily grab and go. And proper marketing and education, spiffing up the look aesthetically, making it look more appealing, and by the way, the offer still stands with that local marketing company to do just that. It's an easy fix with huge and lasting implications, improving the health of Aurorans by providing choice. And the new RFP that the staff has worked on, that we all reviewed, reflects these changes beautifully. Thank you from all of us. From the members of Real Food First, our supporters, the moms, the dads, the kids, the athletes, I can just see Mayor Daw right now cheering on the Junior A Tigers, hearty bowl of chili in hand and multi-grain bun. Councillor Maracas tossing his hummus and crackers in the air as they score a goal. Councillor Humphreys sharing the veggies and dip with her grandkids. And as predicted, media interest has been growing, and many outlets, local, regional, national, and I would suspect even some international, will be looking to your decision tonight as a glowing example of progressive leadership and community commitment. We must follow through on last month's swell of enthusiasm. Synergy between citizens and government working together makes everything work better. As for our group, we don't go away after tonight. Sorry, you can't get rid of us. We will remain committed to being community advocates, to being your supportive voices on the ground, on the streets, and obviously based on where our cars are each night of the week at our recreation centers. Use us, get us involved, put us to work for you, and let's make this work. And going forward, as Aurora chooses Real Food First in our concessions, let us be reminded of why we're here in the first place, why you're a municipal government, and why we're here advocating for change. Because doing the right thing isn't always the easiest choice to make, but it's the right choice. So thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I hope you support the new RFP for vending and concessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to receive the comments of the delegate? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Thank you, Councillor Kim. All those in, we don't do all those in favor. Are there questions or comments for the delegate? Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and not giving up. That's what democracy is all about, and it's amazing. You can come here and people make a difference. Absolutely. Thank you for leaving that information for us as well. That was a great. It just solidifies how important it is that we move forward in this direction, and I can't wait to see the change, and I'm really proud of you coming forward, all the residents, and not giving up. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this takes us and how exciting it's going to be in the future. And we will use you guys. is
Please
you've got
do.
the expertise, and we need you. So that's what it's all about. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and it was so terrific to see you all arguing amongst yourselves as to how far you should go. 55, why not 100?
Let's do 100%.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, one last comment.
Of course.
And I may connect you. The Aurora Farmers Market is very interested in working with you, and if there's something that they can do to contribute. So they're trying to, revive and revitalize themselves as well, and if there's an opportunity to help there, they will as well.
Perfect. You can direct them to our Facebook page.
Sure.
Real Food First.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Casey. Casey, thank you very much for coming, and thanks once again to the whole group for all the work that you've done. I just had one question about bottled water. It's recommended that we eliminate bottled water, single-use bottled water within all vending machines. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
We didn't discuss bottled water. I know it came up at the meeting, and I think it's a great idea for the environment. Water has 0 calories and 0 sugar. So coming out of those reusable water bottles in the vending machine is a great idea with the Aurora logo emblazoned on the front. I think that's a terrific idea.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thanks again.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and thank you, Casey, for your group with all the effort and all the material that you provided for us. And council or staff has indicated that the presentation of the concession stands to refurbish will cost anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 or so. Would your group be willing to roll up your sleeve and help with the creativity and as well as the labor?
I can't commit to a $30,000 commitment, but I can say absolutely we can commit to helping out with that, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of
Thank
your
you.
work on this, and as was stated, we will need your help.
Yeah, you'll see us again.
We appreciate your help to date. I do want to ask you a question. So I'm sure that the group has read our report and saw the suggestions from staff. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that list or disagree with on that list?
I think everything on the list pretty accurately reflected what we were looking for, and I think it's a great jumping off point, and I'm sure in the future as this becomes the standard for all communities, I'm sure that 55% will begin to edge forward and become a larger percentage. But I think I can say on behalf of the group that we are more than satisfied with the recommendations as put forth.
Thank you. Anna, last question.
Sure.
Where did the name Real Food First come from?
We brainstormed at our headquarters, which will remain anonymous, but it's a local eating establishment in Aurora. And we thought it very accurately. We didn't want to put the word healthy on there. We didn't want to seem like we were a fringe group or too extreme. And there was no real way to differentiate concisely between healthy foods versus junk foods, but we know that real food is food that has nutrition, so we decided to call it Real Foods First. It's not trademarked, anyone can use it.
Thank you. And this is a grassroots community group as opposed to a business.
That's right. We're just a bunch of citizens, parents that came together and collaborated, gave ourselves a name to sound like a cohesive voice, and then presented at council a month ago.
Thank you very much.
We're not a business. Okay.
Oh, Councillor Kim has another question.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I thought that while you're on the hot seat, I'd leverage you here for your perspective. I'm not sure if you were surprised by the 4 examples that were laid out in terms of the healthy choices that were in the vending machines and concession stands at 4 other regions. And overall, it seemed it was not as successful as they had hoped. When you were reading it and others in your group, did you have any comments or thoughts in terms of why that could have been? Just so before we get into our discussion, it would be important to hear your perspective.
Yes, because when I read the report as well, it took my emotional excitement to an immediate low starting out that way. But I would say that based on the research that we've done, I would say they encountered the same pilot project stumbling blocks that the town of Aurora may have encountered in terms of dipping your toe in but not going all the way in terms of placement of the items. I don't believe was there. So these pilot projects all had a very similar execution plan, and it wasn't successful for a variety of reasons, but I think that mainly that was because it was, let's put a few healthy foods tucked over here and see what happens, instead of launching it full-fledged. Also, I think Aurora is in a really unique position demographically, where I think citizens and residents, maybe as compared to some of those smaller, more rural communities, based on education and income level, are more accepting and interested in eating healthy foods. So I think it will be more successful here than, say, testing it somewhere else. I understand why they tested it there, because the needs of that community were such that they wanted to promote healthy living based on obesity levels and diabetes. I don't think we're necessarily in that situation, but I think that they rolled it out with the same stumbling blocks that other communities did, just like Aurora.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks again for collaborating with us and bringing this forward. The question I wanted to ask is, were there any examples where it was a success? We're showing 4 that were chosen for this report. Would your group say, well, there's others you could have considered that do have success?
Examples of success. They were piloted for a small period of time. My portion of the research wasn't researching the pilot projects. That was another member of the group, Andrea's. But I believe that there were nuggets of success within each and every one that we took best practices from and thought, you know what, if we roll this out the proper way and take a little bit from each, then it all boils down to the same thing, though, which is healthy food and doing the right thing isn't something you need to test. It's a decision that has to be made for the betterment of a community.
Right, and I appreciate that. So I'll just make note of, you outlined, and you shared this with council, it was left in our council chambers, an excellent resource for us to examine, but you have something called the 4 Ps, where it goes into practice, and I forget them all right now, but
I guess the 4 Ps of marketing, which are placement and price, promoting, is that what you're referring to?
yes.
Yeah,
So that's what you mean by incorporating. We have that advantage of you've
Exactly.
taken the bits and both.
Yes.
Could you, if possible, have Andrea, if she does have any successes, to relay what those could have been to members of council, so that we might be able to rely on that as well, and put them in addition to context of what the report shows in these 4?
Absolutely.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You may sit down now. Yes, you're sitting down for real this time. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. I'm going next to the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the items in the consent agenda? Okay. I have one, if I may. It pertains to C1, C2, and C3. These are all contracts that are going to be issued until the end of the 2018 term. So through you, I'm not sure to who. Is it you, Al? Thank you. I mean, we'll have a new council coming in the end of November, the beginning of December. So is this one of the first things they're going to do, is to have to renew these contracts, extend them, make new contracts?
To you, Madam Chair, the purpose of the reports is, with our procurement bylaw, the moment we go over $100,000 threshold, we need to report to council. So these are long-term contracts, and as we increase the purchase order, the value of that contract increases to a point where we then now have to report to council on the value. So these are amounts that are carried in our operating budget. However, in order to increase our purchase order or get that approved through procurement, we need to report to council that we are actually increasing past the 100,000 threshold. In future, we propose that when we do come forward with a long or a long-term contract or a contract that goes over a number of years, we're going to be asking for staff authority to carry on or increase the purchase order as long as there is satisfactory performance by that contractor without reporting back to council each time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnny. That would mean we have to change the procurement bylaw. But I think, and I thank you for your answer, but my thought is to you, Mr. CAO, these are 3 contracts that are going to be extended for the term of 2018, which means bang, in January, a new council is going to have to deal with this. So why couldn't they be carried forward to February or March so a new council gets their legs?
Yes, to you, Madam Chair. It would depend on the contract, but I would suspect that for some of those contracts, we will begin the procurement process in the fall and line those up as we need them. So if there's any that do need extension, we'd bring those forward. But the conditions will vary by contract. Some of them could be extended again automatically, just come back here because they're over the 100,000. There'll be other ones that aren't here that might be in that category as well. So it'll really depend on the individual contracts, which path we take, whether it's a renewal, extension, or a fresh procurement process.
Thank you. No other, Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to pull C9, but I noticed that it is going to be covered, my item on the accessibility advisory, on the recommendations from advisory committees in item R9. So I'll address my comments at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to your questions with regards to C1, 2, and 3 and get confirmation through you to Mr. Nadarozny that all these 3 items, as indicated in the reports, came through during the budget process. They all seem to indicate that they were approved either in the Parks Department budget or wherever they landed specifically.
To you, Madam Chair, that's correct. They're all budgeted items. This is just the extension of the contract relationship. As it went over 100,000, they come back to council.
That part I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I just, the reason for my comment is I know what it's like at the beginning of a new council term, depending on the number of councillors that are in place. So I just thought it might be prudent to extend those contracts to cover the first few months of a new term. But the CAO seems to be completely on top of this. So all those in favor of... Sorry. We need a mover and seconder for... Thank you so much. Councillor Peary, Councillor Tom, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We'll move right to the R items. R1. Yes, thank you, Councillor Peary. Motion to move R2 forward. Councillor Maracas, Councillor Peary. All those in favor? Thank you. Pardon? I go to Mr. Clerk first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. The 4th operative clause of the staff report asks for council direction, and I would suggest to council that as a basis for a starting point, if we put the staff recommendations from the alternatives of the report on the screen, as just, like I said, a basis to start the discussion. And if somebody wanted to move that, I think that would be a good way to...
So are there any comments on Councillor Tom? Are you moving that? So are you in agreement with that suggestion? Okay, Councillor Peary, would you like to comment?
Certainly, happy to comment. I would just note that the staff recommendation for the last item dictates a 25% minimum, and we're looking for a 55% minimum. So I think that it would likely be either a typo or something that's contradictory to what's already on the...
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe that's a typo. That number 3 of the recommendations is that 55% healthy food be included with the RFP.
Can we ask the people who wrote the report if it was a typo or not?
So Mr. Furman wrote this report. Lisa, thank you.
through you, Madam Chair, it's actually not a typo, it's an alternate recommendation to the main recommendations on the first page of the report. It's an alternate to the 55%.
That's on page 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We went through this with the tree bylaw, Councillor Comfrey. Okay, the motion reads, Mr. Clerk, would you like to explain why you would like to have that?
It was just a basis for discussion rather than including many different amendments, that if we started with the staff recommendations and then council could choose to amend it as they wished. Except for the last one. My apologies for that.
Okay, so the staff recommendation is actually 25% healthy food. No, we're not going to, no, I'm incorrect, Mr. CEO? Am I incorrect on that? Because there's a check beside it.
To you, Madam Chair, so unfortunately I wasn't at the meeting when this was discussed last time, but my understanding of it is that a number of these other issues, options 1 to 4, were also raised as part of the discussion. And so staff have endeavored to capture the various options within those other things that came up and offer them a starting position for those 4 areas. So that covers the first 4 alternatives, because they weren't part of the original discussion. The other alternative, and I agree the wording is confusing, is alternative to the main motion. So if you wanted to go less than 55, you would look at that other option and start to mess with that. With the understanding that generally council's in favor of 55%, which is in the report, then you would just sort of ignore the last alternative, and the suggestion to move forward with the recommendations would only relate to 1 to 4, so that you could discuss amongst those 4 in order to finalize it, because otherwise you have a motion with like 7 variables, and we're trying to make the debate a little less cumbersome. So.
As is.
Move it as is? As is on,
Without 4, without square 4.
Without the last one.
Without the last one. Without square 5.
Right.
Yeah.
There,
Without square 5.
there it is. There.
There it is.
There it is,
Perfect.
right there on your screen.
Perfect. Yeah.
is there a seconder for this? Councillor Maracas? Thank you. I think Councillor Tom will cede the floor to you. Will you?
No, I'm not seeing the floor. I just changed my order. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor
JT.
Tom.
Councillor JT.
Okay, enough. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I get it now. So thank you very much. I'm really pleased with the report. Staff totally listened to the residents that came forward and what they were looking for, what we were looking for after the debate together, and really supporting the initiative. And now I understand what each of these areas are. So to support the 55%, the check marks are the recommendation to ensure that that's what we're aiming for. So inclusion removal of bottled water, it's number 2. Education marketing is option 1. Option 1 for the inclusion removal of vending machines and appearance of concession, option 3. And then ignore the last square. And so the way it's written, and I understand now absolutely that this is the starting point at 55%. So I'm completely in support of this, and looking forward for this to move forward. And thanks to staff for getting to that type of detail, because there was a lot of debate, and I could see how we could get carried away. So that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm looking at my report on page 1, and number 4 doesn't outline any of the specifics that are on what we see before us. So how was that drawn up?
You want to speak? Mr. CEO?
See, you, Madam Chair, that's exactly what we've done now by modifying item 4 on your screen, is reflect those options in the back of the report. So it's just to give you the starting point. You could choose any other option, but it's just to get a starting point for that fourth
Okay.
option, because it was too broad as originally stated.
So it's like a placeholder, so we can sort of see some of the scope and what we're going to be deciding, because there is quite a list. I saw 4 here, and then I turned the page, and on 2, I saw another 9. Okay. Well, I think we have to give thanks, first of all, for a grassroots organization coming forward. I've always said that one of our best assets is our community, and this demonstrates exactly getting involved with your community and listening to them, and then bringing it forward to council for consideration. This is truly a great example of what good work and conscientious engagement does. It's one of the best examples of it. I agree with the issue for operations of vending machines, because we did receive, and the delegate did mention that there are people coming from all over the region and the province, and someone did come forward and notify us and said, we've got a vending machine that has healthy things, just like what you're talking about. And so the reply back was that we'll put you in the RFP process. So I'd like to see a different looking vending machine rather than the status quo. And I think when the RFP comes forward, I think we should be saying we're looking for something along those lines. And I hope that's reflected. But I don't see it in number 2 as being one of the priorities. So through you, Madam Chair, how do we get that thought, or if I could put it on the table to see if the rest of the committee agrees, that we want something that looks different and applicable to the vision that we have for healthy eating, knowing that there are machines, such machines exactly for that. Madam Chair, who would I ask?
I don't have any idea. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think then you'd be looking at the second chart of options, and you'd be, there's some alternates there from a staff perspective.
What page is that, Mr. CAO?
Page 11 of 15 on item R2.
And I've got two options there. Appearance of vending machines. Okay. So perhaps I'll look at that and get back to that. This is not as entirely easy as we see. So that's one comment there. I have a comment on vending machines to be included at all locations currently identified. We have 4 banks in the SARC presently right now, Madam Chair. 2 big banks as soon as you walk in the door, and then as you go around the corner, down the corridor, right outside the washrooms, another 2 banks. And what I would like to propose is that we eliminate 2 of them at the SARC, rather than look for 4, because it seems just to be, I don't know why we would, I've never seen a lineup, like we don't need a lineup to satisfy that. So, Madam Chair, how would I make that known in this RFP process?
If I may ask, on page 3, it says vending machines at the SARC, 4 machines. Is staff suggesting that that's the number of machines there now, or that's the number that are going to be there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Worth.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is currently the number of machines there, and we're not recommending that we reduce them at this time.
I'm surprised to hear that. Councillor Abel?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure I understood the reply. You are recommending 4 such machines in the SARC?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're recommending 4 machines total. 2 are beverage, 2 are snacks and food, and we're recommending that those 4 separate machines, 4 machines in total, stay in their current locations.
Well, Madam Chair, I find this, from my casual look and from feedback I'm getting, there's no justification for having 4 vending machines in the SARC, because it's just occupying space, and there's no volume. Is there a way that we would understand why 4 are there, that there's a lineup continually at these to satisfy the demand, where 2 might just as easily suffice? And for space that is so valuable, in the SARC, it does have a cluttering sort of effect, those machines. So is there a way, based on volume or evidence, that would lead me to believe that we need 4 there? Through you, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Ms. Worth?
Through you, Madam Chair. At this point, they're located in high-traffic areas for the convenience of our facility users, but we can certainly look at removing them, reducing them, relocating, whatever council would like to direct us.
The reason I mention it, Madam Chair, is because it was pointed out by members of the public, and specifically the Hall of Fame, that it is cluttering the hall. And I happen to agree with it. It's not conducive at the beginning, and I've never seen anyone use the machine. So if no one's using them, I don't see why we would have them there. So my recommendation is to bring it down to 2 on this case. And I think, I haven't examined the other centers, but I think we could probably just cut them in half, unless there's something that says the volume is overwhelming and it doesn't satisfy the demand. So, Madam Chair, would I just recommend that we cut them all in half? Or except for the Town Hall and the JOC, but certainly the SARC, LC, and ACC.
Perhaps we'll hear the discussion first, and then,
All right.
if that's okay, and
No, that's fine, and I appreciate it, and I have a feeling that if we have these brand-new looking healthy food items and a concession stand, people that, when the stands are closed and come out after a hockey game at 12 at night, can have enough variety and look at 2 machines and be totally looked after, and there's probably more valuable use of that space in our commercial buildings for other alternates, other revenue opportunities per se. So I'll wait for the discussion on that. Am I using up all my time? I have a couple more minutes? Okay. Thank you. Water bottles. So I think water bottles is we do want to eliminate plastic and everything else like that, but I saw on Facebook, isn't that wonderful, Facebook? I look at it all the time. But in Norway, they have effectively eliminated disposing of plastic bottles. And I'm wondering if on our RFP, we can explore where a deposit is required on bottled water, and when you're finished, you put the bottled water back into the machine and it gives you back your deposit. And that eliminates, and they're able to recycle the bottles, I think, 4 to 8 times. So it's a great way to reduce plastic, and it might be a great initiative. And of course, we talk all the time about what leaders we are here in Aurora. It might be another example of us piloting such a water project, rather than eliminating, put an RFP that would incorporate the model that Norway uses, where there's a deposit required on bottled water and returned when the bottle is slipped back in. So could that be put in the RFP, Madam Chair, while we're here thinking of great ideas?
I see that Ms. Worth has taken the information down. I would think that that's going to require a whole different kind of vending machine. And I don't know if, maybe companies will respond to that in the RFP. I agree that it's the way to go for the future.
Madam Chair, if we're putting an RFP for a new initiative, healthy ideas and green ideas, I think why not put that in RFP and see if there's any interest or any response? Because I imagine it wouldn't be a full stream vending machine. It might just be more of a single dispenser where the water comes out, the return goes in, and Bob's your uncle, and we're done.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As many of my colleagues have mentioned, again, thanks to the Real Food First group for coming forward and for their passion on this issue. It's great, and certainly, we probably wouldn't be here where we are without their initiative on this. I think this is a great step in the right direction, and I think, if we structure our RFP with the criteria that we've outlined that's on the floor right now, as I mentioned, I think it's a step in the right direction. And I just wanted to make a brief comment to staff and thank them for including the recommendation to remove bottled water, plain bottled water. Again, I think it's a step in the right direction. Myself, I'd probably like to see just elimination of plastic bottles in general. I was down at an event in Niagara Falls, and I think I was at the Gale Center. Anyhow, they have a big sign over their concession which states that I believe that their whole municipality has gotten rid of all plastic bottles. Now, they had vending machines and they had cans of beverages, but they gotten rid of the plastic. So I thought that was great. But again, this is, to me, is a step in the right direction, and certainly I think, especially when the town provides water that is safe, clean, and delicious, and it's readily available at filling stations. If someone can bring in their reusable container, to me, I think the town should do more, nothing expensive, but just with our communication avenues that we already have, to really get people motivated to bring reusable containers to the rink, and that they're made aware that we have these refilling stations and such, because it's also, there's no upfront cost. When you're at the arena, you have your bottle, you fill it up. It's great. So I would like to thank both the group for coming forward and staff for including that on the bottled water, and I'll be in favor of the motion that's currently on the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Worth. Ms. Worth, for this RFP, will we be using a scoring system to determine the winning bid or proposal?
Through you, Madam Chair, we will be using a scoring system. We haven't determined what that looks like.
Thank you. So then, in terms of the weighting, and is there an opportunity then to, perhaps assign some weight to innovative ways to achieve some of the issues or items that members of council are talking about, and/or give some additional points, so to speak, for those that come in with a proposal that maybe is greater than that minimum of 55%, or does that run against our procurement bylaws?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can look at that when we set up the scoring system.
Thank you, because I think, there were some comments the last time we had this item before us about, looking for innovative or new approaches, and it'd be nice if the way the RFP was set up that there would be some incentives from a weighted score position for those that maybe have some innovative ideas, as was mentioned, and/or a different approach to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peary?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll pick on one of my vices. Just through you to Ms. Worth. Lisa, with this in place, let's say everybody loves coffee crisps. And despite the fact that there are 55% healthy foods, you've got a lineup of people on a nightly basis asking for coffee crisp, chocolate bars. This wouldn't impede the owner of the concession stand to refill that one item, would it?
Through you, Madam Chair, it would not. We can't sort of enforce that kind of inventory control.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
It's the best.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I think I echo Councillor Thompson's view in terms of having creativity and giving staff a latitude to be creative from our perspective as well. And so through you, Mr. Chair, to Mrs. Worth, the recommendations as it stands, will it allow for staff to be flexible? And for instance, we know that human behavior, it takes time for that to change. Acceptance may take months, if not years, to change. And I don't think healthy eating habits is any different. Although I suspect that Aurora, our adoption might be better because of our sports history and so forth. So through you, will this Is this RFP going to be on a cost recovery basis, and that will not accept anything unless we recover all our costs? Or will this allow room for us to subsidize if necessary, if a great vendor and idea comes along?
Ms. Worth?
Through you, Madam Chair. Typically, these kinds of agreements have been revenue generating for the town. If council would like to provide direction or like us to manage this kind of agreement in a different way, we would need that direction.
Thank you.
Okay, before I put an amendment then, my next question would be, will the parameters that we're voting on here, does it include staff going out to existing brands like Tim Hortons or Booster Juice or Longo's and have them place one of their little shops or franchises in our facilities? Will this include that possibility?
From a procurement perspective, this RFP will be made public to all parties and advertised in our normal channels. The staff are not equipped to go knocking door to door on specific businesses to invite them.
Okay. Thank you. So would it be acceptable for a council to reach out to potential vendors and direct them to staff, should they wish to bid? Because the non-conventional vendors, they won't be looking because this is not a traditional distribution channel for them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, it's a bit of a dangerous slope. If you're simply keeping the conversation to, hey, the town has an opportunity, I'd like you to take a look. It's about our concessions in the community centers. Take a look. Here's how you can find it. Keep it to that. That's fine. Otherwise, you venture into the gray area of lobbying, and we have a blackout period, and so we have to be very careful about that so that we don't end up having to disqualify a bidder because of lobbying or crossing the blackout period issues. So it's a slippery slope, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody before you did that. But if you think that there are some businesses that may not otherwise see our advertising, and you're interested in not tapping on their doors or tapping on their shoulder and saying, hey, we've got an opportunity, you might take a look, I don't see that that's a huge problem, but it is the top of a slippery slope.
Sure. And
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Elliott, and thanks for the reminder, and that's a very good point. We do have a business development officer, Mr. Arulo. Can we direct him to contact certain vendors then?
Mr. Elliott, your face said it all. I think the answer is no. Would you want to add anything?
I mean, this is part of the business development.
I'll refer this one perhaps to the CAO or to the Director of Planning or the Economic Development.
To you, Madam Chair. For some of the similar reasons, I'd want to be careful about sending our staff out to approach specific certain businesses. Perhaps we could find a more general way to get the word out beyond some of our normal procurement if you want to try and involve other businesses. But I think, going, first of all, a lot of those approaches would have to be made to head offices for the kinds of examples you gave. So, I mean, that would require a fair amount of work. And then how are we picking which head offices to approach and not others? And we get into, the town approached 2 or 3 and not all of them. And so it's a rather dangerous practice to start, I think.
Sure, and I understand. And the reason why I'm really pushing on that idea is because we all know that proven brands sell. If you have a Starbucks, Tim Hortons, or Longo's, people have the recognition, people know about the quality and the type of food that's offered, and it's instant success. There's no there's no adoption period, there's no necessarily a money losing situation or a deficit. So in addition, when you look at young children, when you go into, I can tell you, my kids, if they see an apple or a banana on the counter, they're not going to be pushing on my pockets to purchase that, or a fruit cup, which we can probably get a whole bunch at Costco. It's not a surprise to me that some of these healthy options won't sell. And I think other healthy options will, and I think when you combine that with a healthy brand, I think that'd be a great combination. And with that, I'd like to put an amendment on my earlier comment regarding allowing flexibility to staff, that if there is a creative option, a good option that they encounter that may require subsidization from the town's part, that they bring it forward and they don't disregard that. So if I can put in an amendment to include that, please, or put that for discussion.
Would anyone like to second that amendment?
It's legal. I would like to give staff the option to not necessarily have cost recovery on this project, that if there is a healthy eating option that has a high probability of success, don't disregard that option just because it may be negative revenue potential.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask Mr. Clerk to comment on that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like maybe to go to Mr. Elliott. I think that could be a breach of a procurement bylaw, and the amendment wouldn't be in order if that was the case.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Is this something we need to leave till next week?
I think I just need a little clarification again as to what the question was. I was distracted with something preparing for my presentation.
Point of order?
Yes, Councillor Perry?
Sorry, I'd just like to point out that this would be a breach of Section 27 of the Municipal Act that doesn't allow bonusing or us providing subsidies to private businesses in an advantageous manner. So I don't believe, maybe we could get our legal on that, but I don't think that would be allowed for.
But we could look for less profit.
Would that be part of Section 27, or would that be more of how is that any different from?
Thank you. Would somebody like to second this? I agree with Councillor Perry. Would someone like to second this? Thank you for pointing that out. Would somebody like to second this? It's not in order. Okay. I'm sorry, Councillor Kim, Mr. Clerk says this is not in order. Perhaps we could work on this for the council meeting. Mr. CAO, would you like to comment on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think going down this path is making this like crazily complex. I mean, I agree that depending on how it's done, it could be, I think, interpreted to be against the bonusing provisions of the Municipal Act, but I also think that it's really a question of as to whether the town wants to assign budget to providing concessions in their facilities, and that's a completely different format and a completely different structure. So my suggestion would be to let this RFP process go through, and if you're not satisfied with results, or you think that because of the fact that there isn't enough profit in it that it's limiting the responses, then perhaps we could come back with other approaches. So, for example, we could own our own machines. We could buy our own materials. We could fill them ourselves, and then you're not into bonusing. You're just buying product and you're selling it, maybe a little cheaper than it's costing you to provide it. That's certainly within your purview. You do that with lots of services. So, but to try and tie that into the RFP, I think would make it really cumbersome, both from a response perspective, but even more from an evaluation perspective. It's like trying to procure two completely different methods and then trying to weigh them against each other.
Thank you, Mr. Nadrasny. From that explanation, I do agree. I understand. So then, just to confirm then, once we come to a decision before we pick the finalist, will we have this come back to council? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abel, did you want to make an amendment as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make an amendment that we only asked for 2 vending machines in the 3 recreational centers, and leave the 2 in the town and the JOC.
Is there a seconder for that? Am I allowed to second from the chair? We don't have a seconder for that, although I would be in favor, so perhaps you could bring it forward next week.
Thank you.
Before we vote, I have a question. On page 15, oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
That amendment wouldn't suffice, that staff provide a usage of the machines, so that we get an idea why 4 are necessary. I would like to be able to demonstrate to council for their consideration that 2 might be the number rather than 4. So
Perhaps how much money they bring.
how much money is taken in on each of the machines, that sort of stuff. So I'd like to make an amendment that staff report back on that.
Thank you, Ms. Worth, and that would be whatever you can provide to the council meeting. Thank you. Does that have to be a motion?
I don't think
No,
anyone will second.
we'll take it as instructions.
Thank you, because no one will
Thank you.
second anything.
Thank you. Councillor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree. It's a good first step to provide healthy options for our residents and for the children in our community. I'm thrilled with the elimination, from an environmental perspective, of the elimination of single-use bottled water. I agree that I would like to see it go even further, but I think that overall, this is a great first step. And I've been known to cruise Facebook every once in a while as well, and when I posted about our refilling stations that we have in our facilities, there was over 20,000 views and an incredible amount of comments. And so most people, I think, within this community are looking for us to eliminate those single-use bottled water. So it's great, and looking forward to the RFP coming back and moving forward with those healthy options.
Thank you very much. A question on page 15, Appendix F, healthy options. It says, with respect to beverages, flavored water, milk alternatives, and other sugar-free or low-sugar beverages. Are we going to be allowing sugar-free drinks that have artificial sweeteners? That was a topic at that council discussion, but I'm not clear from the healthy options where we stand on that.
Through you, Madam Chair, at this point, staff is recommending that we have a variety of beverages, including sugar-free drinks.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to speak on that? Councillor Abel? Okay. So perhaps council could think about that for the council meeting, about having artificially sweetened beverages in our machines, and how you feel about that. Because that's how this reads at the moment. Thank you. Do you want to share something, Councillor Peary? Councillor, no, you can't, sorry. I'm sorry, you can speak at council. You've already, I believe, spoken twice.
I only pushed the button for the second time. You asked me a question, I answered.
Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to, since Councillor Thompson did mention it, but do we have to make an amendment stating that we would like to score higher innovative ideas in the RFP process to be included in the RFP? Would that be an amendment?
I believe is it also taken as direction, Ms. Worth? And Mr. Elliott?
Okay, that's fair. I think it's a good idea.
You guys look so happy over there. I know this is going to be hard, and I thank you very, very much for the work that you've done on it, the work you're going to do on it, and to the residents who absolutely did something amazing here when they came a month ago. So thanks to them for their work and their education, and we'll see how this goes. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. So back to item 1. Mr. Clerk, oh, we have,
It's just R6. We have a member in the audience for R6, and then there's nobody else here.
thank you. And as we have somebody in the audience here for R6, could I have a motion to bring R6 forward, please? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Thank you, Mayor Daw. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Would anyone like to put this on the floor? Thank you, Mayor Daw. You want to put it on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Peary. Discussion? No discussion on this. I would like to ask staff, I guess it's you, Mr. Muno. I'm not clear where the exits are onto Yonge and Wellington, and if they're full turn exits or right in, right out. I'm looking at page 13.
To you, Madam Chair. No, the entrance, the only entrances onto the development are from Machel Avenue. So the best figure to look at is would be the site plan on page, figure 5, 13 of 18.
Thank you. So, what's marked here is fire route. I'm sorry, I'm not clear on reading this. Could you please explain
Certainly.
it?
To you, Madam
Gentleman on the
Chair.
other side, thank you. I called you gentleman.
Certainly.
Mr.
So
Miller.
this is the Treasure Hill Stack Townhouse
Yes.
development. So 126 units. So the main entrance into the development is from Machel. So that's identified as a fire route. That is a private road that serves all those 6 blocks. And each block has underground parking for those units within each block. But the one way in and out is from Machel. No access to Yonge Street.
Thank you. And is there a second fire emergency entrance exit?
No. The main fire route is that main entrance that is visible from Machel.
I'm kind of speechless. I don't know how that could be. And fire has approved this?
Yes, the site plan was approved about a year ago. I mean, construction is nearing completion. Yeah, so it met the fire route requirements and all the other site plan design criteria.
Thank you. Councilor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, once this site is up and running, will staff be conducting any type of traffic study of our own, considering that it is only a one-way in and out onto Machel, and then from there they're going to be entering onto Wellington, and I mean, right now it's a difficult turn to maneuver, making a left out of there, and so I'm just wondering, with all this extra traffic coming out, are we going to be looking at this as soon as it's up and running?
Through you, Madam Chair. their occupancy is expected in the fall of all these units. We typically don't, but we can certainly have our traffic analysts go out and monitor the site once it's fully occupied. But again, I just want to stress that as part of the review of the applications, the proper traffic transportation studies were conducted, but we can certainly monitor the situation once the units are fully occupied, which is expected to be in the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno, while I appreciate that the applicant did do a traffic study, and I think we said this many times, I don't think we've ever seen an applicant come forward with a traffic study that says that there's too much traffic and it won't be able to handle it. So I would prefer for us to look at doing our own study, and maybe if we can speak to the region as well and have them look at doing a study and doing some counts along Wellington coming out of Machel there, because I believe that there's going to be some issues with some traffic once that is up and running. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, I mean, obviously, you know, it's part of the downtown core, and so aesthetically, you want to make sure that these buildings look as best as possible. I know that often when we see these type of plans, early on we get a conceptual rendering, and many of us, you know, remark on the look and the colors associated with it. But there's been a couple of occasions where by the time the building is finally built, the color scheme or the actual design does not necessarily fit the early renderings that we've seen. So this one as well, if I look back at prior reports, there were some conceptual rendering which showed some the tones of the colors and so forth. Are they committed to keeping that which they showed us early on? Because it's not in the report now. And usually when we ask those questions, you say, well, we can deal with that at the site planning stage.
Mr. Muno.
Certainly, to you, Madam Chair. I mean, Councillor Thompson, if your question is, I mean, have the materials they've used, are they consistent with what was originally approved, what they brought to council? And yes, it is, because throughout the process, we also required sample boards of brick and siding and fascia colors and materials, and we had that before installation. And I've gone out myself, and I've had staff go out, and so the colors for the brick and the stucco and the fascia are exactly what they committed to when we had that discussion in front of council.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Sorry, Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, if I could ask the significance of the applicant coming forward with the request that we execute an agreement referenced in the conditions of approval. So if you could just give me a brief idea for the benefit of myself and others. This is a normal process, and we're releasing them from money they deposited, or could you kind of give me an answer to why this is forward at this time?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. So this building, I mean, we entered into an earlier site plan agreement. The application for council this evening is the condominium approval plan. So the condominium plan is really dealing with the tenure of the ownership of the units and the common elements. And typically we do incorporate a condo agreement, and it is a brief agreement. Mostly the obligations of the developer were handled through the earlier site plan agreement. So the attached conditions of approval to this report really relate to just standard conditions that deal with some obligations that will be incorporated into the condo agreement. So it's standard practice. Again, council would have approved the site plan that allowed for the building to be constructed, the site design, landscaping, the elevations of the building. The condominium approval is just essentially dealing with the tenure of the condominium plan itself to create those actual units in order for the transfer of the final sale to occur or ownership to occur.
So I think that's the crux of it. So in order for the developer to now proceed with selling the units so that they can be registered and mortgaged, et cetera, this agreement has to have been completed within the town. before they can go, like it's sort of due diligence has to be done before a purchaser would come forward to purchase a condo, to make sure that this element has been looked after before they make that investment. So is that sort of like the process as we go through you, Madam Chair?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. So the units have been sold, but the condominium plan needs to be registered to legally create those units in order for the transfer of title to go, to occur between the developer and those individual purchasers.
And so, through you, Madam Chair, all the compliance with Canada Post, York Region, the conservation, they're all in order and checked and to the satisfaction of the town. And so the recommendation is before us to sign the agreement so that they can now get those units sold and occupied.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair to Mr. Ramuno, are the rooftop there, is there any utility in that rooftop, or is there going to be a patio, or what's that rooftop? Patio?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are rooftop, there's a rooftop amenity area for the unit owners of the top floor, top two levels.
Okay. Thank you. And like others around the table, I think because this is Yonge Street, Yonge as well as Wellington, is kind of the doorway to our town, and it is pretty well the heart of Aurora, and it's really critical to that the architectural look is important. It's important that it looks good. Can you tell me I forget what the colored version looked like when it was in planning, but will this mimic more the townhouse look on Wellington west of the Stronach, or will this be more of a kind of a miniature Centro, the 6-story across the street? Which will it more look like?
To you, Madam Chair. So, I mean, the buildings are substantially complete, so they're there now, and they look different than those towns on, just west of Leslie on Wellington. So they are full 4 stories. The units the blocks facing Yonge Street have that antique red brick color to them with some off-white stucco, and the interior blocks have more of a charcoal gray brick tone.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Councillor Humphreys.
Just one comment. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I really like the development there, and I think it looks great, and I hope that there won't be many traffic concerns in that area. I mean, I think the goal is people living there will probably hopefully use transit and walk, because everything's there, other than to get to work if they are outside work far. But hopefully the transit is a great option for them, and I'm just thankful that we're coming to the end of this development, and thank you very much. I'm happy to move forward with this.
Thank you. I don't know how I missed this, but to me, having a fairly dense development at Yonge and Wellington in our downtown core that doesn't have a secondary provision for an emergency exit, even if it's not an exit that's used, but at least is in place should fire, etc., need to use it. I find it very strange, and I've actually never, it's 14 years, I've never seen, Mr. Ramuno can correct me, but I've never seen any plan that we've ever approved that had only one entrance and exit to be used in case of an emergency. Mr. Ramuno, do you want to comment on this?
Certainly to you, Madam Chair. No, there are many buildings and complexes that only have the one primary driveway entrance in and out of the facility. I'll just, remind council on this. Again, it's not a building. They are, 6 blocks of 4-story. They have pedestrian access out to Yonge Street. It's really just the vehicle access is that main driveway access from Machel. That one block 1, just to clarify, has a separate direct access from Machel into the underground. But the entrance to the north does serve, and it's a P road, private road, that services the other block. So this was vetted through not only our engineering staff, planning staff, myself, fire services. It was appropriate design layout, and again, there's pedestrian access for some of those units directly onto Yonge Street as well. But the main vehicle access is from Machel. One serves Block 1 primarily, and the other access is the private road that serves the other blocks.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. And you said the word you said is correct. They may have a main entrance and exit, but there usually is a provision somewhere should the vehicles have to get in. But if fire is happy with it, then I'm pleased to hear that. If there are no more comments, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, that carries. Mr. Clerk, are we back at R1? Thank you. We've been waiting a long time for R1. Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Abel, would you like to second that? Okay. Are there any questions or comments on the pending list? I beg your pardon? Well, we're going to do the pending list because it's been waiting for such a long time, but the mayor's just checking to see if the other mayor's is checking these. If
They're a vendor for our meeting management.
they're our vendor for our meeting management. So, welcome to our meeting. How are we doing with management? Councillor April.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was through you, Madam Chair. When was the last time we did the pending list? This is a second for this term?
It's quite a long time ago because this one has been floating around for months now.
Well, just months, but it took a while to get it forward. So I was just wondering.
Through you, Mr. Clerk, do you have an answer to that question?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the exact date for you, Councillor Abel. It was about between May and July of 2016.
Oh.
So we're well over 2 years. And do we normally have a recommended time? It's an annual sort of thing?
No, isn't it quarterly? Yeah, I believe it used to be quarterly.
Quarterly, meaning every 3 months?
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's quite a lapse. So one of the ones I was concerned about was the cultural precinct, which was not the cultural precinct, that's the wrong name, the Temperance Street Cultural Precinct.
If you could give us a page number, please.
Yes, so there's, it's on page 23 of the report.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, just by way of reference, when we did the cultural precinct, we had it completed in 60 days. Actually, it was extended 75 days, and then, so it was significant. However, I'm just wondering why we did not treat this in the same manner. So, through you, Madam Chair, just would like an explanation.
Mr. Muno, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the note we've got here with respect to the status, and I had this discussion with council when it was first raised, that the appropriate way to deal with this was as part of our official plan review that we're going to conduct, it'll probably be 2019, 2020, and we could deal with the this component as part of that OP review if we wanted to investigate another cultural precinct.
So, Madam Chair, I don't see that that was what council passed, and I don't recall, and I respectfully, nowhere was it understood at the time this was passed by council that we would be looking at this in 4 years. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Considering that we are already developing on Temperance Street, and we could have used a review at that time as guidance for what we had a vision for, just as we did in the cultural precinct. I'm just wondering, through you, Madam Chair, is there any way that we can ask this process to be done at this stage?
I'm not, Mr. Muno.
Certainly, if council wants to provide, that direction to, conduct a separate land use review for the Temperance Street, cultural area, it's something that we could, we'll have to, budget for it and prepare a report to council with respect to a separate budget in order to proceed with an RFP to conduct that study.
Madam Chair, I'm just looking at the action, and that's exactly what we asked for back in December of 2015. So I don't think we require any direction at this time. I think, through you, Madam Chair, we should follow what was requested right there.
Mr. CEO, it seems to make sense to me. Do you want to comment on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, if that's the direction of council, this particular one predates me, so I'm not sure what the context was or when the idea to consider it as part of the official plan review came up, but I don't even know if it was on the earlier update or not. So, but if that's the will of council to move forward with a separate process, then we can do that.
I think it's, again, I mean, it's clear. This is just something that just was never, an action ever was given and never taken, so. I think staff's direction would be to put an RFP out, just as it says, to engage, very similar to how it was done in the cultural precinct, and I think that was the whole idea when we were doing this.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Hi there, through you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of suggestions and then just a couple of quick questions. So, and I appreciate the pending report. There's a lot of work here. You can see a lot of things that were accomplished, things that are pending. So I think it's great. It's provided by of the departments. Perhaps, and I'll hear whatever other councillors would think, but perhaps any items that are closed can be put in a separate section, just that always there for reference, but maybe under a closed section, so that we don't need to kind of ruffle through. There's so many great accomplishments, so I think to show closed and maybe that's good, and then have the ones that are open with dates, and then anything pending. So I just think it's good to look at separate, just so that we know sort of the workload and then the challenges ahead, and it just keeps it a little straight. In my mind, it's up to you how everyone else feels about that, if that even makes sense for staff's perspective. But I know for me, when I'm going through this, I'm kind of hopping around back and forth. So the closed ones are successful, put them over here, go through, we did so much work, and then what we have ahead of us still. So just sort of that type of feedback. But otherwise, it's a really, lots of solid updates. Just a couple of quick questions, nothing crazy urgent, but there's one, and it could be me, and maybe I didn't, but on page 7 of 51, it's Councillor Marakis' signed bylaw enforcement, temporary sign bylaw as it pertains to municipal election signs for future consideration. Did we not see something come back on this?
Mr. Clerk.
Sorry.
Thank you. And through you, you are absolutely correct, Councillor Humphreys. This has been approved. This list dates back to basically the start of this year, late January.
Right.
So at that time, nothing had come forward. So it's just because the list has been deferred a few times, that's why it's still on here. The next update, though, will show that as complete.
Okay,
I'll check
'cause-
with Ms. Van Leeuwen, but I believe it will show as complete.
Sure, only because the update says future consideration. So should that be a different type of an update there, just a different, should be more solid thing, it's been reported, and if you don't mind, just, unless I'm reading the report incorrectly.
Through you, Madam Chair, as the clerk stated, this item has been deferred for a couple of meetings, and since it was initially prepared, that item on the pending list has been completed. A
Okay.
report came to council in February.
Yeah, I
And
thought
there was
so.
a recommendation that we move forward with a temporary.
Oh, so this is just timing?
Yes, it's timing.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I just want to make sure I was reading right. That's great, perfect. And then just because it pertains to some of the things we were talking about tonight, sorry, just give me one quick second, I had it marked. Okay, so again, on page 13, just under Councilor Marakis's, again, his motion to, I'm sorry, I just want to compliment this motion. So this was for the winter maintenance service levels. I just wanted to say I can't thank Mr. Downey enough for the incredible work done this past season. It has been tremendous going back to those service levels and having real quality work done from our snow removals, and hope that everyone feels the same way. But maybe people aren't happy about the parking restriction change, but in terms of removing snow and sidewalks, it's really great to be able to go down my street and not get yelled at, because that's all I had been for 2 years in a row. And somehow the guys know how to shovel sidewalks right, or plow sidewalks right. So not absolutely perfect, there's here and there little things, that's fine, that's typical, but it's nothing like we had before. So I just want to thank you very much, it's a huge difference, and it's absolutely due to leadership, for sure. You heard our residents and ourselves loud and clear, and it's amazing when that happens. And just one other one. So it's on here and it's pending, it says Q1 218.
Page, please.
Page 19 of 51.
Thank you.
And it's kind of comes out of the Environmental Advisory Board. It was from 2016, Bring Your Own Bottle Initiative. And I know we're working really hard at that. And we're getting there. And just to Councilor Marakis's comment tonight, through you, Madam Chair, if we can hear perhaps from our communication departments where we're at with that and how close we are to getting to exactly what I believe Councilor Tom mentioned tonight about plastic bottles.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have been working with our program manager for environmental initiatives on that campaign, and I believe I signed off on the creative for it last week, so I believe it should be launching probably within the next few days to get the most.
Great. That's great news. And then last but not least, just a comment, because we've talked about it a little bit here, the Traffic Advisory Board. Page 9 of 51, and then it got moved to IES. So that's just the first reference to it. It moved to IES. So I met with Ms. Mackenzie Smith today, and Place Speak are really, it's coming around. I think I saw over 300 to 400 people that have actually commented and put. Maybe you can share a little bit about that. That's with you, Madam Chair. But what I wanted to suggest is that I believe as the word gets out there, it's going to work. For a while, they were wondering, if maybe we really should get a traffic advisory board together, but perhaps you can just provide a quick update on that, because I think that was something of interest that the councilors have asked for, so if you don't mind. Sure. To you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yep, like I said, we've launched and we're continuing to get some more engagement on it and really ramp up our communication efforts around that. And so far, we're actually really pleased with the response that we've gotten and the number of residents that have signed up. So there's been just about 500 different views of the I'd have to look into the back end to get some of the more statistics around how many pins have been dropped, but people are actually dropping pins on a map, making comments and suggestions, and then we've been able to go back and forth and things that are generating enough interest on the map are then moved over into the discussion forum, where we kind of try and have a bit more of a robust discussion around that. And we're working with the traffic analyst to identify a couple of those issues that then have generated enough community concern that our traffic analyst will go out and do a report or do some sort of research into potential measures, which would then go back onto the platform and engage the community around that specific issue, and then that would ultimately result in a recommendation to council in terms of resolving that issue. And that, once that kind of piece gets put together, I think then we'll definitely see a lot more engagement on it when we're actually going out and asking people, hey, we're thinking of putting speed bumps on your street. What's your opinion on that? Then obviously people are very directly affected by that, so they're going to want to go on and have their say on that. You know, and one thing that I always kind of say, there's good and bad about engagement. Sometimes the lack of engagement is a good thing, because if somebody is upset about something, they'll look for a way to engage the community. They'll look for a way to engage the town to resolve that issue. If they're happy with the issue or they don't have any issue, then they're not going to seek out ways to let their feelings be known on that. So there's pros and cons of that, but we're actually very happy so far with the response that we're getting, and the comments, and people are very, very thoughtful and engaged.
Perfect. So just thank you so much. I really appreciate that. This is through you, Madam Chair. So what I noticed today, I think if we can also, and through social media, I know there's some really powerful users around here, but if we can put that link out there, and perhaps somebody I know over there, and Mayor, and if you could just publicize that link and just say that what happens is staff does analyze that, and if there's more than 3 or 4 or 5, there's something wrong, they'll dig into it, they'll communicate and come up with a plan. Also, every call that comes into our customer service desk that has to do with this traffic will get referred and will be put on and pinned on to this Place Speak. So I think it's really important to know that information is getting there and is getting documented, and it actually geographically pins it on the area. And last but not least, was really interesting, most of the information was in the northwest quadrant, our area, so where I live in. So I think getting more information out there will help other residents in the whole part of our town know. And once we get more information there, it's really great for even as councillors to go in and see what's really happening, and we get some concrete, information. And to Stephanie's, Ms. Mackenzie Smith's point is that staff will proactively say, okay, maybe this warrants the traffic study and the analysis of traffic calming or changes, and staff will proactively go to those residents and do the work that perhaps residents have to do when they're not really happy and they get upset. So I think it's a program that will eventually continue to launch and get bigger, and I think with our help around the table, we'll see some significant results. But thank you to staff. I know there was a little bit of a slow start, and I thought it was, we need people in front of it, but maybe people in front of it from a resident and input perspective with staff behind it and updates to the council would really be great. So thank you so much for that. And that's it for me right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Councillor Peary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak about the Temperance Cultural Precinct. It was my understanding and recollection that there was initially a really quick time turnaround asked, which was talked about at council, and we decided not to proceed in that fashion. I seem to remember that we wanted it to follow along the same lines as the Cultural Precinct around Church Street, which was identified in the Promenade study. So maybe instead of asking staff to do something that we're not all 100% on, maybe we can ask for some additional information to figure out what the reason and the rationale was, why it's indicated the way it is in the pending list, just to make sure that we're getting the full, complete information, not just what people are sort of remembering around the council table. So if through you, Madam Chair, either from Doug or from Marco, if we could get that information, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. So Mr. CEO said he's taken he's taken the direction and we don't need to put that in motion. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'll try to put some context on it. It's great to have electronic records dating back that far, but to the best of my recollection, Councillor Abel put forward that notice of motion in December. The very following month, Mayor Daw put forward a notice of motion for the Town of Aurora official plan review. And it was during that discussion in January that Council discussed about rolling in the temperance into that official plan review. And that was the direction that was left to Mr. Ramuno. And perhaps the clerk can go back and look at it, that meeting back in January of 2016 for the full conversation, but that's how it ended up being the direction in the pending list to do it as part of the OP review. It came out of Mayor Daw's notice of motion in January of 2016.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. There should be an update on the list. I agree. Councillor Abel for the second time.
Not second time, I just want a question.
I'll permit a question for clarification. A short question.
Is the notice of motion that Mayor Daw put on, is it on the pending list? Is it incorporated on this like it should be with all the other notice of motions we have here?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The notice of motion
What date was
presumably
that?
would have become a motion, so it should be on here somewhere. If you could check into that for us. Thank you.
January 2016, that's the answer.
The clerk has taken direction on that one as well. I have a question on page 23. It's with respect to the motion from Councilor Maracas on cultural heritage landscape inventory. And this probably would be to you, Mr. Muno, because this came to the Heritage Advisory Committee October 16. I don't remember what was supposed to happen after that. I do note that there's, in the action, there's a mention of incorporating this into the official plan review. I'm not sure that was the intent of the information that came out of the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. So if you could speak to that or speak to it for next week.
Certainly to you, Madam Chair. What I'll do is I'll look into the motion and our minutes from the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting when this was first discussed and provide an update to Council before next week.
Thank you, because whatever those minutes were, they would have been passed by Council, and I don't remember any reference to the official plan update. Thank you very much. I do have a few more questions, but after doing all this work, I have left my notes at home. So with your permission, I will ask a few questions next week. I'm sorry, Councillor Abel, you have spoken twice. Is that?
I thought you said it was for clarification.
You had one for clarification already, right?
Councilor Perry called for two. He said I'll allow for clarification.
Okay. I can't do it. I'm going to call the vote on this. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. That carries. Perhaps you can ask the question. Do we have new business too?
Yeah, or next week. Next week I spoke once and I did clarification.
I'm going by what the clerk said. I'm sorry, I'm going by what the clerk said, John. Okay, where are we? Are we at number 2, Mr. Clerk? We've done number 2. Oh, that's right. Thank you. We are now on R3, and we have a presentation that was, it's right here from Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to try to keep my comments very brief tonight. Just going to introduce you to some of the issues that we encountered in developing the water, wastewater, and stormwater budgets and my report is before you. It was collaboratively put together with help from my financial planning team, but also my water billing administration team and Al's water operations team. And so it's a collaborative effort tonight. The water budget, we have to consider it as 3 separate budgets, and so we need to look at the water budget as a zero-based budget, sewer or wastewater budget as a zero-based budget, as well as storm. So 3 separate budgets. In addressing this year, we encountered some challenges. Last year, there's some errors in the budget approach that were taken, and so there was wholesale costs that were loaded onto the water budget, unfortunately. We also had, and it's been this way for quite some time, our corporate overhead and our direct billing and administration has been loaded onto the water budget. And so this results in, for this year, we've corrected that and reallocated those. And so it results in retail rates requiring the rebalancing. And so I've got a table here a little later in my slide deck that will show you how that happens. But we're trying to balance each of these budgets to zero with an appropriate allocation of these overhead costs and correcting that wholesale budget issue. We do have wholesale costs continuing to increase. This is from the regional rate. However, while their rates are increasing, household demand per household is actually decreasing. And there's a number of factors there. And so we're experiencing that. So despite growth, our water consumption is not growing all that much because the household demand is decreasing. Our fixed costs, I believe, are in good order. You'll see in our summary attachments that overall the operating costs for the operations division is down. The administration and billing is down a bit. However, we are adding 2 additional staff on top of that. So I believe our fixed costs are well managed. Our R&R contributions are now stable for water and wastewater. However, they do need to continue to increase for stormwater. The growth has been adding pressures to us from a staffing perspective, and so this budget is asking for 2 new staff. It's an additional mechanic in the fleet maintenance area. Al's shop is having difficulty maintaining the entire fleet and keeping things operational and ready for the day's activities. We're also requesting a full-time status conversion of an existing full-time contract in our financial services area to support the water administration. We've been, with the growth, with the real estate activity, there's a lot of factors that are driving the need for staffing there, and so this report is formally asking for approval of 2 FTEs to the town's complement. Retail rate change drivers. Because of this rate rebalancing issues and what's putting pressure in which direction on which budgets, I tried to include this table. It's a little busy, but you'll see on the top line the wholesale rate increases are putting pressure on the water rates and the wastewater rates. However, we don't have a wholesale cost on storm sewer, so there's no impact there. But overall, on the bill, there's upward pressure. Wholesale cost rebalancing. Remember I said it was loaded on water and to the detriment of wastewater, and so we've got a shift from water down and wastewater up, but nothing on storm. Overhead admin cost redistribution. Currently it's all loaded on water, so we're reducing that, pushing it up on water and wastewater and storm, but nothing overall on the water bill. Overhead allocation increases from the tax budget. That was approved back in the fall. And so we can't change that now. We don't need to change it, we don't believe. But either way, it's adding pressures across the board to the bill. The operational costs, as I said, are pretty much in control. If anything, they're downward. The new staffing is adding pressure across the board. The contribution to R&R is flat in water, flat in wastewater, but upward in storm rate. We have reduced demand for household. What this does is when demand per household comes down, that means people are buying less water. That means there's less contribution to pay for these operational costs. So that puts an upward rate pressure on the budget. Our growth of more customers does the opposite. And they almost outweigh each other, but the growth of more customers does put a downward pressure on water rates, a downward pressure on wastewater rates, and a downward pressure on storm rates. So those are the volatility of these budgets is set out in this table. And so overall, we see a 12.2% rate reduction in water, a 33% rate increase in wastewater, 5.4 on storm, but overall on the bill, it's 9%, which has been about the pattern of recent history, driven primarily, again, from those regional rate increases and our own contributions to reserves. What's the impact on the average quarterly bill? You can see on the water, it comes down by 17 bucks. Storm, wastewater goes up by 42. Storm, it's pretty much even at 81 cents for an overall quarterly impact of $25 or $100 a year. So that's what this budget is about. From an accountability perspective and a transparency for yourselves, I thought it important. There's two very important assumptions that have to be made in the development of the water budget. One is, how much water do we expect to have to buy from the region of York? And that drives a lot of rate. And also, what is our water loss, or our non-revenue water, and what is that percentage? So our estimated water demand, while it's an exciting number, we use about 5.3 or 5.4 million cubic meters of water in a year from the region. In the process of our town operations, and there's a number of factors that cause non-revenue water, our own operations, fire use, water main breaks, regular maintenance, meter slip issues. There's a number of factors there. We see it actually falling down to 12.5. It's previously been running in the 14 to 15% range, and we're seeing it fall. Exactly why it's falling, we can only prognosticate. We suspect it has to do with some of our water main maintenance issues, as well as our meter change-out program. And so it's just beginning to show results, and I thought that it was important to show you what those estimates are. We'll measure them during the year, and next year at this budget, I'll tell you what the actual was and what our estimate is for the next year. So that's my intent of this slide. On the combined budget, you can see it's a $23 million revenue budget, and in total there's $23 million of costs. 14.9 of it is wholesale cost for water and wastewater. We pay directly to the region of York, leaving about $8.7 million of costs related to the operational and R&R provisions for the town share. What is the outlook for this budget? What are the outlook activities that we see? We've got, during 2018, we're going to continue to look at those overhead allocations and also the internal cost distribution of the operational costs. As you all know, Mr. Downey is still relatively new in his function at the JOC, and so he's looking at all of those operation costs and activities that we do, and perhaps in the 2019 budget we'll see some changes in that, either upward, downward, or internal allocation adjustments. We're also looking at the outside operation activity, that's where we are there. The stormwater rate structure, currently the engineering group has retained a consultant to look at how we might better distribute the costs of stormwater to our residents and businesses through the rate structure. And so there's a number of options there, and a report is coming forward to you before this summer. Those rate changes, if any, would be implemented for 2019. We also have a proposed water meter reading capital project pending. There's a little bit of description in the report before you tonight about that. I feel it's exciting. It's customer service oriented. It's not ROI investment driven. It's about the customer service and our ability to get bills done quickly, readily, and be able to communicate effectively with our clients about their water consumption if there are problems happening. And it also leverages our new technology in our water meters that we're putting in. We also see down the road that the regional wholesale rate increases are expected to continue. Another 9% from them in 2019, another 9% a year later, and then it starts to wane off at this point down to about 3%. And Madam Chair, I'm going to just conclude that this rate comparator is in your slide deck. Aurora does have fairly strong water rates, as it were, following these increases. We do know, though, that we are convinced that we are 100% cost recovery basis on this rate structure. I can't say the same about all of my counterparts. Some of them will suggest that they are, but in my opinion, we are. And the average consumer uses about 250 cubic meters of water per year. The impact of this rate change is set out in your report. And overall, customers are now paying close to $1,200 a year for their water, stormwater, and wastewater services. I mentioned the rate structure report is pending on that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Dan. You partially answered my question. It really was about the future outlook for the regional rates. You know, since I've been on council, it's been the wholesale rates have been increasing 9-10% every year. And whenever we've gotten the outlooks, it's certainly projected it. I think the last one I saw was 2021 or 2022. But it seems every time we get close to the taper down point, the region comes back and says, no, we still need to keep it around that 9-10%. So are you confident that the current forecast for calling it to taper down in the next few years will actually happen?
I'm confident that my forecast I just shared with you is from the region of York. With great respect, through you, Madam Chair. The region puts out their forecast. I can only convey it to you as factually as I can. Yes, you're correct. It seems that they predict a waning down. In the meantime, they're through their 5-year update program. They find more costs down the road, or the cost escalations are through the roof, or additional projects that were missed. And I've experienced the same thing in our own shop as you've seen as in our R&R contributions. And so the rate is being driven primarily by their contributions to their reserves and looking after their infrastructure, but also upstream from them is the region of Peel and the City of Toronto doing the same thing on their wholesale rates. So it's a tumbling effect. Fortunately for us, we're pretty much near the end of our full cost recovery approach. With the exception of stormwater, we've got some work to do there still.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, really around the water loss figure you presented at 12.5%. For some reason, I'm thinking years back it used to be lower, that it was single digits. Now, I don't know if it's, you know, we've sort of re-looked at it from a calculation perspective and made some changes, but historically, has it always been in double digits?
Through you, Madam Chair, historically it has. There's a number of components to it, and actually, if I'm just going to flip a slide here, you can see these are the sources of what is referred to as non-revenue water. Non-revenue water is simply the difference. If I buy 100 gallons of water from the region of York, I only sell about 85. I receive revenue for 85 gallons. So 15 of it, or 14, is lost to these sources in various degrees. And so it's possible that you had a number that somebody thought that maybe system leakage was 5% or 3%. I don't know. But my experience, I've seen these numbers, the total overall water loss, or non-revenue water, as it were, anywhere from 10 to over 20% in some places.
I mean, it's good that it's declining. So again, it looks like some of the projects and initiatives we're doing are benefiting. I was looking for one of the older presentations from last term because I thought it was around 6 to 8%, but it may not have included all of the sources that you have listed here. So it's hard to say if we're comparing apples to apples, but at least it's trending down. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Elliott and Mr. Downey. It's a little disconcerting to see the changes in moving from water to wastewater. And I appreciate that both Mr. Downey and you, Mr. Elliott, are taking this over relatively recently. So I thank you for the work that you're doing in that and getting us on track in terms of properly allocating our costs. How confident do you feel that we're getting a better handle on the distribution of costs between water, wastewater, and well, stormwater should be fairly straightforward?
I was the one that began the process and the mathematics of doing it. I used a pro rata approach for this year. I've committed to Mr. Downey and the CAO that we'll continue those conversations and the detailed analytics of that. But rather than rebalance a budgetary issue of the wholesale cost issue and not try to take a stab and a swing at the overhead allocation and the admin billing piece, I thought would be short-sighted. And so I attempted to do that this year as well, to the best of my ability. Next year, it'll be a little bit even more refined. How confident am I with the allocation now? 85, 90%?
About the same as our water loss? That was a joke. It's okay. Well, I thought it was funny. The other thing, and I noticed that the new market rate is substantially lower than what we are. My understanding, and Mr. Netarozny and I discussed this probably about a month ago, and maybe it's something to look at the Finance Advisory Committee, but my understanding is that new market has an account charge and then the water charge. So that what it does is it distributes the cost more equally across the town, so that it's because the pipes are there regardless of whether or not you use water. So there's a basic cost that I would incur just by having a residence in Aurora, and then my use of the water. So if that would be something that you could perhaps take just under your wing and maybe have some comments on that next time it comes around, I think it would be appreciated by certainly by myself and my colleagues.
Do you want to speak to that, Dan?
Just very briefly, I think you're going to see a proposal for a dramatic change in the way we bill stormwater this year and the rate structure for stormwater. I think it might be appropriate for during 2019 to undertake a retail rate study with respect to how we recover water and wastewater billings. There are blended rates. There's a number of different combinations in play in various municipalities. Some have ventured down that path successfully. Some have had troubles with it. And quite frankly, when you look at the philosophy between some of the pricing schedules that are out there, some of them are actually in conflict one versus the other. And so it's a very interesting piece of work, and I'd be happy to bring forward a budget in 2019 that will include a rate study. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And basically, my questions were answered. I was going to ask exactly that, between the retail water rate and the retail wastewater rate, there's just a jump. And then, what can we do in terms of if we could find historical data, and then how do we keep it, as accurate as possible, understanding the culprits of wastewater and sort of determine that as we go forward, because it's always been one of those things where it's very difficult to forecast, but we continue to go on this road, and I think, as you said, it's going to take a while to catch up, but I think we're on the right track. It's very complex, that's for sure, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask about the proposed capital budget that staff are developing. So through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, a lot of times I've had conversations with you where residents have basically opened up their bill and have sticker shock where they've received the bill for $1,200, $1,500, and I'm just wondering if this will help catch those anomalies that happen within those billing cycles.
Mr. Elliott.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it's a little premature to talk too much about this project, but the answer is yes in some cases. Those with new meters, we can leverage the technology that are in those new meters better with a radio reading system and on a much more timely fashion. Those with the old data, we can also, by going to the radio read system, we can capture their recent consumption over the last 30 days and be able to do some analysis with the client in those circumstances. Unfortunately, we can't detect continuous. Our intent is still to read that meter only once every 90 days and bill that. There's different flexibilities in the system, so my intent is to try to get the system into play, leverage the new meter technology that's out there through the system, and then see what we can do with the existing meters that remain in the system.
Thank you, and I look forward to that report when you bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Mr. Elliott. Regarding the water loss, if we were to somehow capture and identify the 12% and it's no longer a loss, what kind of savings are we looking at here from a number perspective, dollar perspective?
Through you, Madam Chair, off the top of my head, I haven't done that math. I could put that together for next week.
Yeah, but can we extrapolate and assume that if our bill based on 88% is X dollars, then we can just add 12% or add 112% over X?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the mathematics may be that straightforward. However, eliminating water loss is not possible, because water loss includes, or non-revenue water includes, the flushing of the mains that has to be done to maintain water quality. Mm-hmm. It includes fire use, which happens. We don't bill that water. Mm-hmm. When a water main breaks and burbles down the street, that is not revenue water. It's considered as part of this non-revenue water. So we can't completely eliminate it. We can simply work to minimize it. However, some of it is actually statutorily required to maintain that water quality in the pipe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think for public consumption purposes, I think it's important to know that we have a grip on where part of that 12% is going, because when you see the 12% loss, it's clearly unacceptable. When I look at, I've read profiles on the city of Halifax, where the FCM is located, and they've followed the model in UK, where they're just identifying one grid section by grid section in Halifax and trying to identify where the loss is coming from, and they were able to do that and reduce it from like 25% to under 5%. And even if some of the losses come from usages due to the York Region Fire and other services, I think we need to be able to have a number in terms of how much water they use, so that we can actually understand how much is real water that's just really being lost into the system. A lot of that will help to reduce the purifying chemicals we use, the pumping of the water, and so there's a lot of side costs that we're able to conserve and save because of not losing out on that excess water. But thank you for the excellent report.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was along the same lines, Mr. Elliott, you put up a chart of all the losses that were there. I didn't see it on our here. So I think we could go by elimination what the system leakage would be by identifying and giving a number to all the other ones we can. For example, an unmetered town use, and I do believe last term there were numbers given to that based on just sort of a ballpark, but to give us some sort of idea. 12% of 23 million, give or take, is somewhere around over $2 million. So, it's something that we should be able to say, well, if we know through the things that we can identify, 1 million of it, then we know where 1 million is going in these two items, which would be system leakage and aging meters. So I'm just wondering if that, as you move along, could be sort of incorporated in your data analysis. Through you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Elliott.
There are systems in place where we're attempting to capture as much of this as we can through estimates as to what our water main breaks, what kind of water loss happens because of that, and hydrant maintenance and water quality flushing, and even the unmetered use. From the fire use, when there's a major burn in town, we attempt to get a report from the fire department as to what they think that they may have used. So we do have some data, but unfortunately it's a little hit and miss. We're going to be working with Al's group to see if we can tighten up the capture of this data as we go.
I think that would be useful for our taxpayers in reporting, rather than. I think it would just look good if we could sort of identify and give a number. It would make us look like we're basically on top. Theft of water, is that something? I don't see someone running down the street with a bag of water, but is that someone knowingly bypassing a meter or something along those lines?
Theft of water happens in a couple of different ways. It happens through trucks filling up in an unauthorized way from our hydrants, and then using that for landscaping purposes or filling pools or whatever. It also happens unfortunately, through meter bypass, which is completely illegal, and we do have processes in place to try to identify that. And so those are the two primary causes of theft of water, and it happens in every municipality.
I guess so. It's like any item or utility or whatever, like gas or anything. It's people steal copper out of the hydro wires. So,
through you, Madam Chair, just while I've got your attention on that issue, the town is prepared to fully prosecute to the extent of the law anybody that we catch doing this, and we have done it in the past where we've identified meter bypasses.
Thank you. And so on rate comparators, we are right at the top behind Georgina. Is that number there 4.73? Does that indicate that we are the second most expensive? And you did indicate that we are a full recovery and can demonstrate full recovery, where that may not always be the case.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
And so there's got to be an element to water conservation. Is that an applicable idea as this water gets more expensive? Not water your lawns. I know we do all sort of that thing, just water deep once a week, don't, et cetera, et cetera. So that's part and parcel is the education and a preventative measure.
Through you, Madam Chair, actually, as outlined in my report, there's a number of reasons that people are using less water. And there's newer construction has these higher efficiency devices put in, low flush toilets, low flush, water conserving shower heads and sinks, and that. We also know that consumer demand is very responsive to price increase. We call that elastic from an economic term. So it's very price elastic. When the price goes up, consumption goes down. And also with the pesticide use coupled with price increases, people are saying, I'm just giving up on my lawn, and they're not even watering their lawn anymore, or have greatly reduced the amount of water that they used to throw on their lawn. So those are three main drivers that are driving conservation in the home.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Oh, just one question. I'll use it as my second time. The increase in tax assessment would basically pay for the 2 full-time positions. I mean, population growth is growing, so we're getting a greater tax assessment.
For 2018, through you, Madam Chair, for 2018, these 2 positions are proposed to be funded through the water rates. The mechanic is suggested that it's required because of the increase in the fleet on the water side, and the other one is definitely a water resource in the billing administration side. So they're properly, in my opinion at this point, they're properly funded from the rates. And so they're funded through growth in consumption. They're funded right here in this budget here tonight.
more water consumption, more revenue pays for the two positions. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I always find interesting about water rates, and I think I've said it before, the more water we save and the more we conserve water, the higher the rate goes as a result. So you would presume, looking at those numbers, that because we have the smallest geographical area in the town of Aurora, that it would be easier to deliver that water to our residents, so our costs should be near the bottom. I don't have any way to quantify this, but I feel like we're probably one of the greener communities in the region of York. And as a result, because we're using less water, we need to charge more because of the rate that the province or that the region sets. So it's interesting, this full cost recovery model, and that's the impact that we have as a municipality. I just want to confirm I'm correct in what I've stated. Could Mr. Elliott confirm my understanding, or let me know if I'm wrong?
Mr. Elliott.
I can't align all of those items, but you'll see right down at the bottom two lines of this chart, reduced demand per household drives the rates up, and growth of more customers drives it down.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick comment following on Councillor Kim's comment. I think when we're talking about non-revenue sources of water, it could be divided into two different categories. One would be to provide services for our residents. That would be parks and fire, etc. I think that's a fair way to express it to the residents. And then the other one is, I don't know how you want to phrase it, but, and I'd like to see that next time, because I think I think the residents could understand that, as opposed to water loss. The water loss is theft, but keeping the parks nice for them, that's really not water loss.
That's good.
With respect to construction use, I'm not clear, is that the town's construction use or the developer's construction use? And if it's the developers, well, I almost hate to say this because they'll just put the price of houses higher, but shouldn't they be paying for that water if it's for construction use?
Through you, or to you, Madam Chair, construction use water is referred to the two things. One is, as they build a development, it's the developer who is putting in an 8 or a 10-inch water main down the street. If they put in a kilometer of pipe, they have to fill that pipe, they have to hyperchlorinate it, they have to essentially sanitize it after they've built it. They have to flush it, fill it, flush it. There's a protocol there, and it could be as many as 5 or 6 times, depending on the test results, just to charge that main the first time for use. You also have builders who are running hoses and using water during construction of the actual house, washing up after painting, filling, wetting mortar, mixing cement, that kind of thing. And so it does happen. And during the winter, we do know, and we've seen it in the streets, they leave a hose running because otherwise it'll freeze. And so it's just running perhaps as 724. And so we do have a charge for water in our agreements, and we're going to be looking at that during 2018.
Thank you. Good to hear. It's past 9, 10 past 9, so we'll have a short break now. Motion to receive the presentation and refer to item number 3. Thanks, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Tom. All those in favor? And could we now take our short break? Okay, let's put R3 on the floor. Thank you, Councillor Maracas. Councillor Tom, are there any questions? Okay, well, I have a question. I think perhaps, first of all, through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, have these, or Mr. Downey, both of you, have these water rates included enough money? I'm talking about stormwater. Have these rates included enough money to make sure that our stormwater system is maintained and replaced? Because we all know that stormwater is increasing, and we don't want the residents to be caught short on this. So is there, well, I guess the answer to the question, Mr. Downey, you're looking at me, is, in your opinion, is there enough money provided in this budget to maintain our stormwater infrastructure, so that it can deliver and be safe for the residents when we have these severe storm conditions?
To you, Madam Chair, it is a bit of a learning curve for me, so
Yes.
I am continuing to look at these extremely closely. I can refer you to page 14 of 17 in the report. And the majority of our stormwater rate is contribution to our reserve. That is based on our 10-year capital forecast, on which we feel work that needs to be done in order to maintain a proper stormwater system. And as you can see, we've actually increased that by $150,000 in 2018. But part of my review is whether or not that is the right number. So I believe it's the right number at this point, but I haven't had ample opportunity to in detail investigate all aspects of the 10-year forecast that relates to that, and this number may be changed in 2019, but right now I'm fairly comfortable with that number.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Would you like to weigh in on this?
Through you, Madam Chair, Al went to the long-term R&R contribution. I also believe that on that same page, the $453,000 value, which is the town operations, which is Al's group out in the streets, that there's funding provided in there for contracts between there and also in the roads operating budget in the tax-funded side. There's money in there to ensure that the storm drainage system functions and is maintained on a regular basis. And so again, those are operations that are under review, and between the two of us, these are all being looked at again in much more detail in 2018.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I think it's a very important point, and I don't know if our council, or in fact most councils, have really thought this one through, because the weather is definitely changing. Thank you. Oh, I would just like to say, I remember the days when we didn't charge for water. And we all just took it for granted. Maybe you don't remember those days, but when I first started council, I don't think we charged for water. Thank you. Can we have our break now? All in favor? We will now break. I hate you. Okay, so I'm a terrible chair. I am getting calls already. Happy spring. Not calls. I'm actually getting people stopping me when I'm walking around town. And it's time to come back to work. Okay. Mr. Clerk, we're into number 4, right?
Yes, please.
We've quorum? Yep, we have quorum. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4. This is amendments to the use of corporate resources for election campaign purposes regarding third-party advertisers. May I have a motion to put this on the table? Thank you, Mayor Daw. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are there any questions with respect to this? So, Mr. Clerk, this is just tying up loose ends, in effect? Thank you. Would you just like to?
Through you, Madam Chair, and to you, yes, that's exactly it. The policy doesn't address third-party advertisers, and we want to make sure there are no loopholes or anything available.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Councillor Peary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe the clerk can just provide us with a quick update. How do we police third-party advertising? What happens if they don't want to submit any expenses? They just, decide to do their own thing and not submit.
Thank you. Good question, Councillor Peary. Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think that there's too much in way of enforcement under the Municipal Elections Act or the Municipal Act for these offenses. A court injunction is a way. Should a third party be advertising and I'll write letters and things like that and demand that they stop, but short of if that were to not be obeyed, I'd have to seek legal advice on how to where to go after that.
And as a reminder, third-party advertisers have to register, so that would be the impetus. So if they don't register with you and you start seeing ads, then you'll be sending out your letters. And if they do register and then never submit any financials, what happens then?
Mr. Clerk.
Again, I need to review the Municipal Elections Act and speak with our town solicitor and legal department. But I guess if I could just answer that next week, maybe rather than speculate.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. R5. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. It looks pretty familiar. Councillor Peary, would you like to second that? Thank you. Are there any questions with respect to this? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. We've done R6. R7. Would someone like to put this on the table? Thank you, Mayor Daw. What was your motion? Seconder? Nobody would like to second this? Whoa. Well, somebody please second it for discussion, because there's a lot of residents who are interested. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and as you mentioned, it was my motion, and and we've had lots of discussion over the years, and originally I was not in favor of doing cessation, more because of the cost. But as we've all experienced, there has been a substantial increase in the number of trains. There's now 18 trains that go south and 18 trains that come north every day. So the usage of that track has changed dramatically over just over the last year, the last half year, in terms of adding the midday service. And so I think that we have to change how we think about that disruption to our residents in the area. It is so. It's other towns are doing. Markham specifically, I know, implemented or is in the process of implementing a pretty comprehensive anti-whistling plan. And it should be noted that it's the direction is for an engineer to not use the whistle as long as he feels that the crossing is safe. The train engineer will always have an option to sound the whistle. So we're not precluding them totally, but what we're doing is we're changing how the trains go through our town. And I think that other municipalities will pick that up as well. Obviously, with the grade separation at Wellington, that will take care of that area. So we're really looking at St. John's and Edward Street. And that's, so I would encourage my colleagues to move ahead with this and be interested in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I thought a lot about this, and I agree with the mayor. And, I think we should be moving to listen to our residents who are complaining about the whistling, train whistling, and obviously knowing that there's going to be more and more trains, it's going to be more and more of an issue, especially as mentioned, the increasing frequency of train travel. But after thinking a lot about it, I thought, we're going to spend $235,000 excluding taxes for the design and peer review, and then the bulk of the costs are going to come at 2019 budget. But obviously, none of us can predict what the makeup of council will be and what the interest in the community will be for moving forward with the project for 2019. So my thoughts are, why would we spend $235,000 at the end of this term of council and then have the project potentially not move forward in the next term? And then we've wasted $235,000 if the next council doesn't proceed. So my thought would be, why not we just, I think it's in the recommendations to defer this totally to the 2019 budget deliberations. I understand that maybe delays the process a little bit, but, if we spend, and I'd like to hear other comments on that. If we spend $235,000 and then the project's not moved forward with, we end up not getting that back. So again, my comment would be at this point is that why not just have it all take place at the beginning of next term during the 2019 deliberations. And so that's my comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think anyone expects me to say this, but I have softened my position. I am no longer vehemently opposed to this. I am just opposed to it. No, I recognize that there have been changes in the train frequency over the last few years, and there's anticipated to be some more. So I still struggle with the fact that individuals have moved in close to a train yard and train tracks and are now asking for the train whistle to stop blowing. So that's my struggle that I'm still dealing with in this. With that said, I do agree with Councillor Tom that doing this at this point in time would be committing a future council to either move forward or to waste money. And I'm not sure that's prudent for us to be doing at this point in time. I understand the timing issues that likely by 2019 we'd be expecting some more trains. But It's something that I'm struggling with more than I would have been 2 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago, so.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm not sure who best to direct this question to, but in the report, it certainly speaks to the cost, but in prior reports we had, there were some concerns raised both by staff as well as some around the table with regards to the risk associated to the town. And so looking at the older report, it talks about, rises in the town's insurance program. It also talks about the town assuming full liability, things about potential claims from third parties, and even the town may be exposed to uninsured risk. Has there been any further discussion or update on that, or is there still the possibility that the town could be at risk if this goes forward as a result of it? And I don't know who best to address it to. Looks like
Who
Mr.
wants
Ramuno's
this?
eager.
Mr. Ramuno, you can start and then,
Madam Chair.
no, okay.
Celeste is not here, but we've had some discussions, and prior to proceeding with the project, there are a number of agreements that council needs to execute with I think we've listed those on page 3, with respect to agreements between the town, the region, and Metrolinx regarding the indemnity agreement. So those are still requirements prior to proceeding with the...
But is the expectation we're still assuming full liability?
I'll have to confirm that. That was my understanding, but again, I'll have to report back to council prior to next week on that.
I'd like to see, perhaps between now and next week, maybe a little bit of an update with regards to the insurance and/or liability risk associated with the report. I appreciate the dollar costing and so forth to the projects, but I think that's another consideration for myself. And if it's possible, it's great. If not, I can come offline.
Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. So I've changed my opinion a lot over the last 7-8 years on this one. Over the last couple of years, I've had some residents contact me about that, and some new and some not so new residents. Some who've lived here for 25, 30 years with the tracks behind them, and now with the frequency of the trains, it's constant, and it used to be once every few hours or twice a day or something, so it has changed. It's very different now. I also understand that there's other municipalities that have changed this and have stopped the whistle. I believe in Markham they've done that, and it's been very successful. I'm just wondering if, from now to next week, if we could get a little information on maybe some neighboring municipalities that have already gone through it, and maybe they'll tell us what the risk is in terms of, what our liabilities are, and I'm sure they've done that analysis. And also, from a safety perspective, how can we feel sure that this is the right thing to do from a safety perspective, just as a municipality? So I think if we can get that information this week will be good. I know for sure Markham's done it, and it was a big change because they were adamant like we are, and then because of all the changes that they're having, that they've had to do something. So I think that's true. And I also think by next week I will be deciding to support this or not, maybe for the next council, because there's a huge commitment. And we're basically saying this is what you're going to be doing and landing it in their laps, and they may not necessarily think it's something they want to address. So I may, after getting that information, decide if it's right to go forward or not, from my perspective. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you want to speak, Councillor Kim?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. For you to Mr. I guess Mr. Bastnier, who's answering this? Is this Mr. Downey? So the 800,000 for the St. John's Side Road, the road authority is York Region. Is there any possibility that the region would help would partner with us in sharing some of that cost? Mr. Ramuno?
Mr. Ramuno, thank you.
certainly through you, Madam Chair. No, we've had those discussions, and the region won't cost share with any of those costs, so that would be borne by us. In the previous report, there was an additional $800,000 amount identified for the crossings along Wellington, but with the grade separation, that $800,000 figure was eliminated, but that cost, it's a regional road, but it would be borne by the town of Aurora, because it's our initiative to cease the train whistling.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have comments. Sorry, Councillor Abel?
To you, Madam Chair.
No, I don't believe you've spoken.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a way we could do this report and not do St. John's? Through you, Madam Chair. My reasoning is it's not as densely populated. I mean, it is a wildlife in the Mackenzie Marsh, etc. But I was just wondering.
Mr. Muno, yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe that's an option. I mean, it was always included. All the at-grade crossings were included in town, but I think that is an option. It's something that I think I'll have to circle back and have a discussion with staff and the Metrolinx folks if the direction is to continue with the whistling at St. John's and just have that excluded from this project.
Just putting it there for an option for our consideration. And but just having said that, I mean, it's a very important link for the Tim Jones Trail and part of the Nokita Trail. So, you know, pedestrians are the one we want to be most concerned about walking. So,
Councillor Humphreys.
Through Madam Chair, I'm getting the most complaints in that area by St. John's and Yonge, so I personally want to keep it because there's a lot of residents that actually live with the tracks right behind them there in Old Aurora. So I wouldn't mind just a town policy, I think, and maybe if there is areas where the town feels it's not warranted, that's fine, and we can talk about that, but I think a town-wide policy is what I'd like to see. Thanks.
Thank you. Following on the previous comments by Councillor Humphreys, I would like to know how Markham is doing with this. I think that's very important information. And I definitely think we need to have, and the residents need to have more information about insurance and liability implications. I did a lot of work on this summer, and of course the residents who are closer to the tracks are really disturbed by this. And further to other comments, they're all our residents, and wherever they live, wherever they've chosen to live, wherever they've had to live because it's more affordable, they're all our residents. We need to take care of them. And by 2025, we're going to have a train every 7.5 minutes. That's kind of, well, I mean, if we can do something and it's not going to be horrendous with respect to insurance and liability implications, then we have to do that. But I think the residents in general also have to know that if we do it, there will be liability implications. Our residents have to be quite informed. So I would have liked to have seen much more information in this report. Thank you. Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along with the information in regards to liability, is there a way we could also get how many incidents have occurred over the years at each track crossing, if that's possible as well? And then also through you, Madam Chair, if we were to go forward with this, and I know it would eliminate the train whistle, but they could blow the train whistle, you know, in those off times where they feel that they need to. How would we relay that message and make sure that residents understand that? Because I can foresee a lot of complaints coming and saying, hey, you guys stopped the train whistle, but it was blowing this morning. What's going on? And so how do we get that message across and make sure that everyone understands that they could still, we could spend all this money, we could do all this, and they could still blow the whistle? And I think that's an important message to get across as well.
Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's a fair comment from Councilor Marakis. Most of the residents I've talked to are well aware that the engineer has the final authority over whether or not to blow the whistle. So indeed, you would have to communicate that out, but the majority of people I've spoken to are already aware of that issue or that potential.
Thank you. Yes, it would involve a massive education and communications effort on our part. Thank you. So I would just like to say that we've been talking about, not we, the royal we sitting at this table, but councils have been talking about this for a very long time. So, you know, we need to step up and make a decision, at least with respect to the initial investment. It's a community issue that's not going to go away no matter what council is sitting here. Thank you. All those in favor? Oh, could we split the motion? Yes, we can, Mr. Clerk. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, you'll do that. Calling item number 1. All those in favor? All those opposed? None? I'm sorry, Councilor Marks, did you vote? Are you okay? I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. So you would like 2, 3, and 4? 2, 3, and 4 called together. All those in favor of 2, 3, and 4? All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That fails. That's defeated. So I imagine, yes, thank you, Councillor Thompson, for next week. Okay, item number 8. Item number 8 is the Canadian Tire property on Yonge Street at Murray. I believe Mr. Clerk would like to make some comments before we begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I've received a request from the people handling this application. I'd like to defer, and I'd like the chair to pass it over to Mr. Ramuno for more of an explanation on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Muno. I was surprised to see this because we were asking it to come back when the property was sold. But would you like to comment on this?
Certainly to you, Madam Chair. So Canadian Tire did approach us a little while ago wanting to proceed with their zoning amendment application. And as I indicated in the report, they indicated that the property was no longer for sale and they wanted to rezone the property for additional commercial uses and try and attract some tenants. They, as you know, during 2017, the property was for sale and there was some interest, but nothing ever materialized. So we did proceed with this report. Just the other day, we did hear from the planners for Canadian Tire who indicated that they wanted to defer or remove the report from council because they have been in discussions with their property neighbor immediately to the east, and I think there's some interest in working together in perhaps a redevelopment concept for the land. So they were aware of our concerns and council's concerns last year when they proceeded with their application, notwithstanding they were looking for potential buyers. So they've asked us to remove the report from council's consideration. I haven't met with anybody yet, but I will certainly try and sit down with them. So my recommendation is for council not to consider the report, to defer it indefinitely at this point, and I'll report back to council once I get additional information from Canadian Tire and the property owner immediately to the north.
Thank you, Mr. Muno. So I believe we finished our... we do need a motion to defer. Thank you.
All options, I'm comfortable with defer to future
refer back to staff, so it'll be on the pending list. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Tom, Mayor Daw, all those in favor? Great. Beg your pardon? Oh, all those opposed? My apologies, Councillor Peary. Okay, Mr. Clerk, I believe that's, oh, the R9, yes. And I think Councillor Abel wanted to speak to R9, so could I have a motion to put R9 on the table? Thank you, Councillor Tom. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, that side of the table. Okay, actually, so, I'm sorry. Councillor Kim seconded. Mr. Clerk, I'm not sure if you saw that. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Abel, did you want to address some comments from one of the committees? The Accessibility Advisory Committee, perhaps?
I did want to highlight that the committee recommendation be received that within the report is the accessibility plan. And what we brought out was prepared by Mr. Chris Catania in December. We made our remarks, but with him leaving, the remarks, and this has come before us now in March. But we did want to highlight that the Accessibility Awards, it's B, memorandum, be reinstated as a category of the town's Community Recognitions Awards. It was before. During this term, it was replaced with Exclusivity Award. So we think that because it's a statutory committee, that we maintain that award in the Community Recognitions Award as was recommended prior to. So I just thought we would bring that forward. The other recommendations is that that we try and develop a larger pool of people into the committee, as is the best practice in our neighboring municipalities. So those are just a couple of highlights, and most of it, the rest of it is follows along the plan as we had before. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, may I just ask the question, are you talking about a larger committee or a larger committee? Thank you. So then the accessibility plan will come to council, when do you hope?
As I read it, it's a report that's coming forward, the plan. These are the recommendations out of the committee, so.
Okay. Mr. Clerk.
It's my understanding that the plan is up for council approval this cycle, so I don't know if it'll be coming back to
To the committee.
Or to council at least, outside of this report.
Okay, so the intent is for it not to go back to the committee with the interim advisor in place, just to go forward with the comments from Mr. Catania?
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, it says the committee recommendation contained in this report be approved.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor? Councillor Peary, can I help you?
Madam Chair, typically we get a little bit more information. As opposed to just approving all of these, I'd like to understand the rationale of the implementation on this. So I know that we have, not like Councillor Abel had said, the exclusivity award, but the inclusivity award. I just wanted to note that. But how would staff go about implementing that? Would it be just a name change? Would it be a whole new award? It's my understanding that I'm still always a little bit not sure how this process works, but voting for this now, I think Councillor Abel expects and understands that this means that we will be implementing all of these things.
Right.
And I would expect to see another report back before any of this is implemented. I think we need to definitely take into consideration the comments that are being made, but just because a committee makes recommendations, I don't think that the council should be approving them wholeheartedly. In the same way that the Environmental Advisory Committee is going to be looking at the terms of reference for the next cycle, I don't think that council should be just approving whatever the committee gives them. I think that there needs to be a little bit more oversight and looking at the information. So can we get clarification on whether or not what's the committee meeting minutes, what are the motions that are on the table, whether they'll be approved like this, or whether it's been my understanding that in the past, we've received updates and reports, and we can consider what they're saying. I'm in favor of receiving their recommendations and having them as part of a bigger report. I just don't want to be approving them right now, if that makes sense. So could I get clarification?
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think when the summary report comes forward, the recommendations within it, when they're approved by council, they are actionable for staff at that point. So they are for us to implement at that point.
So what would you suggest? Is there something that we can have for next week that would help us, or do we need to bring this?
I would make an amendment that staff bring a report on these additional items that were added to the motion.
So we're talking about only the Accessibility Advisory Committee? Because I mean, generally we read through these and we agree or not as a council, but because these are changes, you would like to have, it would be prudent to have more of a report with this?
Well, there was a memorandum talking about the 2018 to 2024 accessibility plan. And in that, they're talking about the terms of reference, they're talking about committee members, they're talking about reinstating the accessibility award. I think for clarity, I'd like the opportunity to digest this, look at it, have a conversation with staff, just to get a little bit more information before we approve these and have them actionable by staff. So the amendment, Madam Chair, would be that we have a report back on items B, C, and D.
It's contrary to the motion. May I ask, is Ivy in position at this moment in time?
Yes, she'd be able to answer these questions.
Yeah, so maybe that, Councillor Perry, maybe that would be important for us to ask Ivy to provide clarification on this, because she's so well versed in accessibility issues. Maybe she could provide that for next week, and then we could see if the answers were in order.
Sounds good.
Thank you. And also, when you're just changing the name of the award, is that correct? Inclusivity to accessibility?
I know Councilor Marakis is going to speak to it.
Okay.
Because he's on the Community Recognition Awards, as our report, our information tells us that at the beginning of the term, there was an award for accessibility. That was since taken away, and there's been a new addition called inclusivity. So we were just asking that it be back included.
Okay, we need some clarification on this for next week for sure. But next is Councilor Marakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, no award has ever been taken away. It was just enhanced by the committee. The committee felt that it was better to enhance it, and they've changed the name to Inclusivity Award. And that award is presented to an individual, group, or business which has contributed to making the town of Aurora an inclusive place to live, work, and play for all people, regardless of disability, race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, family status. So it's to encompass what it says, inclusivity. So no award was ever taken away. I would suggest that if the Accessibility Committee feels strongly about it, they should come and delegate to the Recognition Awards Committee and have a conversation at that level, and then it can be brought forward to council after that.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, and it was a decision made, and this is not the first, this is the second year we've used it, and last year the Accessibility Committee actually nominated people in the Inclusivity Award, understanding that that was sort of all-encompassing. So it stops no one from nominating individuals who, you know, it was never taken away. Like the term reinstated, it was actually not reinstated. It was just the term instead of you know, accessibility. It was just turned inclusivity. It's so just. So
Thank
to
you.
me, I mean, if the committee does feel that strongly about it, then absolutely, I should be delegated because we're knee deep in it now. I mean, April 6th is the end of nominations, and absolutely, they should be nominating someone within that category. Last term, we actually worked together on it and nominated a couple of people.
Thank you.
So I'm surprised at this, that's all.
Thank you. I'm going to speak because before you, Councillor Abel, for your second time, because I sat on this committee for, well, last term.
Sure.
And what I think might be happening is that inclusivity is one thing, and that's something we all want. But I think accessibility, and it is the committee's mandate, I think accessibility is something that should be honored or could be honored on its own. And so I can understand if the committee wanted to make it a separate award as opposed to inclusivity, because it just adds so many parameters to the awards. Anyway, to the award. Councillor Abel, did you want to speak again? Sure. Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Often, when presented with a departmental plan, or in this case, an accessibility plan, staff present the plan to us and just give us a little overview and some thoughts. You know, I know that, you know, Stephanie's presented the corporate communication, and Dan will present ones and stuff. So I'm just trying to recollect, did Mr. Catania or anybody else bring this and make a presentation in the last year? If not, perhaps one of the suggestions would be to have Ivy or somebody, one of the staff members, present the plan, answer some of the questions, because I know there's a few items that they've added to the plan in terms of the work going forward. And so through you to either Mr. Nazarozny or the clerk, did staff delegate on this plan in the last year? Is it possible?
Madam Chair, I don't believe they had, and we can certainly arrange that.
Thanks. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And when this plan was first put in place and Ivy was the staff, she did delegate to all of us. I think you were on council then, but I think we now have an acting, and she's doing two jobs. So it's problematic in that way. Anyway, Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I seem to have hit a nerve here, and I didn't mean to. The committee works very hard and reviewed this, and it took 3 committees, and they're very sincere when they're making recommendations. And it is, as it says, the accessibility plan for the next 4 years. It's a review that's done in a number of our areas. Councillor Marakis alluded to the fact that the accessibility award was not removed nor eliminated, it was enhanced. And if we want to speak to it, we could come to committee. So my immediate thought is that if you're going to enhance some things in the award system, you might come to us before you enact it. Well, I'm just, we're not in knowledge of any background. I'm just on the committee. So if staff did not provide that and say that we did that, it's not in ours. I'm just going by what we are receiving in our committee. And as I've said, and as we feel, the Accessibility Committee is a statutory committee. And we have dedicated people there, and they're asked to review a plan. There was an award for accessibility, and it has been enhanced. And this committee here did not know of it, was not advised of it. Maybe council was, but the Accessibility Committee wasn't. And they just recommend that we would like to. I don't want to get into the parameters of who was recommended and who was talked to, because I'll do that offline, but I did discuss the nominations and people that were put forward, and I can give an explanation why we thought this was important. If you don't want to hand out an accessibility award, we can go at this at different times.
Don't say it that way.
Okay, well, I mean,
Please. It's not fair.
this is a recommendation from the committee, so that's, if it's beats your approval, you can approve it. If you don't want to, then, I mean, that's your choice. And the other three were just recommendations through the term that have been brought up before at this council, and that is they'd like to increase the membership, and they'd like to put out a little more public awareness going forward. So I'm just reporting on behalf of the committee what the recommendations are.
Thank you. Councillor Peary, have you spoken yet to this? Oh, okay, so everybody's spoken one. Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, 2 years ago, all the committees were made aware of the changes that this committee was putting forward in regards to the names of actually quite a few of the awards. It even came to council, unanimously passed council, the changes. There was the elimination of some of the names as well, the individual names that were in it. I can tell you the Green Award was instituted, which was an enhancement of the Environmental Award. So I don't see the Environmental Committee coming here and saying that you've deleted the environmental thing. So I mean, no one's saying that we're not awarding any awards for accessibility. The reason for the changes and the enhancements was that there was not enough nominations coming in. We were actually getting 0 nominations. And so the committee as a whole decided to enhance the nomination process to allow for more nominations to come in. And as Councillor Humphreys mentioned last year, actually the last 2 years, the person that won the award was actually someone with disability issues and accessibility issues. So to say that accessibility, someone with accessibility issues is not being recognized or awarded through the town's award recognition awards program is a false statement, and I actually take offense to that.
Question of privilege. I never said that.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
Let's roll the tape back.
I never said that.
No, I think we'll just leave it as it is.
I just ask them
My
to withdraw it.
my ruling is that I don't remember, and I say we just leave it as it is, and if people at the council table were paying more attention than I was, then you could appeal my ruling. So let's just leave it and be very careful what we say. Councillor Peary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to our clerk, Michael, I'm reading these motions, these amendments, and clauses B, C, and D, in my estimation, don't relate at all to the report that was presented. How are they in order?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are motions passed by the committee. It's up to council whether to approve them or not.
I I don't have an issue with them. I just want more information. And I think doing it this way, when we have a report about an accessibility plan and the motions are coming back or committing us to changing names of awards, committing us to change terms of reference, committing us to do extra publicity, I want more information. That's all. I want to have a debate on those issues. That's all. I think it's fair that we have a conversation around them. I believe that we changed the rules to stop this from happening. You know, from my estimation, you know, if there's a report about an accessibility plan, the committee typically would recommend the accessibility plan that council endorse it, or they would recommend changes for council to do. But to have a committee outright make decisions like this that just come through council without us having the ability to look at them, I had an issue about it in the past. I have an issue about it now. I just want to look at these in more depth. I tried to do that. I was told that it was not in proper order. So to get out of it not being in order, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask you to call everything except for B, C, and D, to call those three separately, and then I'm going to ask you to refer those to staff. So just so that you're aware of from a procedural standpoint, I want to make sure that we do it properly. I want to make sure everybody around the council table or the committee tables are aware of what I'm going to be asking.
Through me, to Mr. Seo and Mr. Clerk, would it be appropriate to ask Ms. Hendrickson to help us out with this for next week? And then if the answers require more information, more input, then we could go from there at council. Would that be acceptable to you, or would you still refer?
I would prefer, Madam Chair, to do it the way that I felt comfortable doing it.
Okay, thank you. This would be, so B, C, and D would be to be referred back to staff?
After we vote on everything else first.
Staff being Ms. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so it's just, Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so let's just back up a little bit. So we were presented the Town of Aurora Accessibility Plan. We get it presented every year.
Yes.
And it's the team does a huge job on this, and they review every ounce of it and provide recommendations. And you know, I'm proud of their efforts. I mean, it's a lot of work. And then can I just confirm that out of this report is where these recommendations came from? Because it doesn't really align to the report, but maybe it's just things that the committee felt that they need to bring forward and want some changes, which is fine. Absolutely allowed to do that. So just a couple of things. The recognition award for inclusivity, by no means was accessibility award removed. It was changed, like many were, and there was a big discussion. I was on committee then, and it appeared that the committee understood, and we were excited about providing our input. In fact, you know, sometimes I wish we would tape some of these things, because there was information about inclusivity being absolutely critical to this committee, because it just means that everyone is equal. Everyone, you know. Anyway, so if this is something that the committee wants, absolutely we'll look at it. There's no reason not to, but I just don't want it insinuated that it was removed, because that's really sad, and that would be really wrong on a lot of levels. So I just want to make sure that the message is that was not removed. We actually nominated 2 years in a row as a committee to put in names on the Inclusivity Award. So it's just concerning to hear that. That's all for me. And in terms of reference for more people, absolutely. If this is what the committee wants and it's the right thing to do, then staff should review it and and get it ready for perhaps the next term for sure. It's just, I guess it's just surprising a little bit that it comes out of this report, that's all. It just looks like the report probably triggered some conversation, which led to this for sure. But I wouldn't mind a little bit of background from the accessibility manager that we have, just to help us understand, what the report had to offer, and then how these relate into that. Or is it just some great suggestions from the committee? I think that's where my confusion lies. The report is one thing, and usually we come out with, different things that are specific to the report and AODA compliancy, which is absolutely critical. And then there's these suggestions as a committee as a whole. They want to see these changes, absolutely. So I think that's just where I think some of the disconnect is for us. Thanks.
Thank you.
He doesn't want this. He doesn't want anything from the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Just so that I'm clear, when we call this, Councillor Perry, you're referring to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, B, C, and D. You're not talking about the Environmental Advisory Committee. It's just the Accessibility Advisory Committee that we're going to refer back to staff.
So to clarify, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, I'm talking about recommendations 1, recommendations 2 of the overall report, and then with regards to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the item number 1 there, the motion to approve it, I would recommend. I would ask that motions B, C, and D we hold off to vote on with regards to the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting. Their motion to endorse something be approved, and that their request to receive regular updates also be approved. So really, it's just items B, C, and D from the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And, okay, Mr. Clerk has a clarification question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Councillor Perry. If the intention is to have B, C, and D referred back to staff, would you like to make that motion before we vote on whether these items go forward to? I think that would be more procedurally correct.
Councillor Thompson.
If I may, the recommendations that are in B, C, and D are embedded into the plan on page 56 and 57. So if you're looking to approve the plan and defer those items, you're at a crossroads there, because if you look on Appendix B, page 56 and 57, you will see the 4 action items that they're looking for, and they correspond to those 3 items. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because otherwise we're doing 2 things at the same time.
So what you're saying is we can't approve the plan because if we're not approving this part.
If council's looking for more information and yet they approve the plan, you're across.
Okay, well, we've waited this long for the plan. Maybe we'll just defer its approval. Councillor Abel?
Well, along the same lines, you can receive it, but you don't want to approve it. So you don't want to vote on number 2, or you want to say we're not going to approve it. Then you can make the recommendation that it be referred back to staff. I think that's how you would do it procedurally. Otherwise, you're into contrary and all this and that. But for simplicity, receive one, disapprove the other one, and then defer it back.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Clerk on this. You tell us how you'd like to do it, please.
And thank you, Madam Chair. In light of what Councillor Thompson said, I think Councillor Perry, I think I saw him agree. Maybe an amendment that the second clause is revised to approve the recommendations from the Environmental Advisory Committee and refer the recommendations from the Accessibility Advisory Committee back to staff.
Okay, so we need to, shall we make that amendment?
Yes,
we haven't got it.
Well, if someone wishes to.
Is that okay? Councillor Perry. Councillor Perry is making that amendment. Is there a second for that amendment? To refer back to staff? To approve the Environmental Advisory Committee?
I haven't looked at the environmental, so I don't want to vote on that if we can vote them separate. This is talking about... It's talking about the accessibility.
You call it.
Councillor Gardner, I think you just need a seconder for the amendment at this point, and we can sort that out after.
Thank you. Would anybody like to second the amendment to refer B, C, and D of the, number 1 of the Accessibility Advisory Committee back to staff?
It's all of the accessibility advisory recommendations.
All of the accessibility advisory recommendations. That is the amendment that Councillor Perry is putting forward. Councillor Tom is seconding that. So all those, does anyone want to speak to that?
We're amending the second clause so that the environmental committee recommendations are approved and the accessibility advisory committee recommendations are referred back to staff.
That's an amendment that's been moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor? No. Okay, we'll wait until it comes up for clarification. Sandra, let's get Ivy to weigh in on this. She's fabulous. I mean,
This would be perfect, would be good. Could she come next week?
can we have an amendment to the amendment to say that we try and get Ms. Hendrickson to come next week? As soon as possible? Okay, can we do it as soon as possible? Okay. And the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommendations. It just should be the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommendations. Can you put the word recommendations in there? Be referred to staff. We're referring them to staff for to report back to council as soon as possible. Okay, so we're going to vote on this. It's to report back to council as soon as possible. All those in favor? All those opposed? One. All right. I'm sure I didn't see. All those in favor? Okay. It passes 8-1.
Main motion is amended.
Main motion is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. Who knew that was going to be so interesting? Memorandum from the mayor, R10. So, Mr. Mayor, are you going? Are you in the show, Mr. Mayor? A mover and seconder, please. Mr. Mayor, would you like to move it? Okay, thank you, Councillor Tom. All those in favor? There we go. New business, starting with Councillor Maracas tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I just wanted to bring this up because I did speak twice, so I didn't have a chance to say this, but isn't there a committee member that's on both committees, the Community Recognition Awards and the Accessibility Advisory Committee? So would she not have been able to speak to this at the committee level? I'm just curious. But other than that, I'll just leave that out there. But other than that, I just wanted to say, I know this is a public service announcement, possibly, but just want to say that the Tigers won their Game 3, 5-4. They're up 3-0 against Cobourg, so go Tigers, go.
Thank you, Councillor Maracas. Mr. Mayor.
And I think it needs to be pointed out that our new director of Ms. McDougall, her son plays for Coburg. Just saying, so, you know, there could be some... There could be some issues here, just, you know, we need to know this up front, okay? Is the deal finalized, Mr. Nader Rosny? Yes, sir. Okay, so it's too late. Other than that, no, I have nothing.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. CBC had a story recently that was kind of interesting. It's coming out of Innisfil, that they've been able to save millions of dollars on public transit up by brokering a deal with Uber. And I know that we've had, you know, representatives for York Region come in and speak, and there are some challenges with regards to the cost to subsidize and users and stuff. So I guess I just want to direct it towards Mayor Daw that perhaps, you know, someone from the region can look into what's happening in Innisfil and just take it into consideration whether or not there's any opportunities there or not, because they're not using it for all of the services, but really just from a pool service to move people around from one hub to another. But on the surface of it, it seemed like a very you know, unique solution to some of the issues that they're having there.
Thank you. Sounds like it's definitely worth investigating. Councillor Abel.
An innovative approach. I was just wondering about the Rogers cameras. They're no longer being functioning. Are they being retired or removed? Does anyone know, through you, Madam Chair?
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, once it's been, I think soon they are intending to move it. We haven't heard about the date of the removal, but yes, the Rogers cameras will be removed.
It's just a shame we lost that. Now, I contacted staff and Mr. CAO responded, but the stairs that are behind Aw Shucks in disrepair and have been for some time is always been maintained by the town. And it's a dangerous sort of situation, and it looks bad. We have a little parkette there, and of course it's right on the street, and we own the parking lot. And Mr. CAO, you did respond and say that there's a bit of history, as you said. There's no defined property lines or anything, but I'm asking for new business, what are we going to do? We're not going to leave that indefinitely. We've got to put some sort of action on that. I mean, if we're going to have property standards for our residents, we've got to demonstrate that we're going to adhere to them as well.
Thank you. Mr. CAO.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So there are property lines for that piece of property. The challenge is that nobody is actually owns that property. And so when we first set out, this came up actually about 2 years ago, I think is when it first came up. Before they were in the state of disrepair that they are now, they were already a bit of a hazard. And when we discovered that nobody had title to that property, or nobody was registered as owning that property, there's a process you have to go through. We can't just assume that property. We have to, it has to be offered to all abutting landowners and so on. There's a whole legal process that has to be gone through. There was also the consideration that one of the existing landowners who might be redeveloping the site might have wanted it, but if the town took it, then maybe we could work something out with them. So there's been sort of all kinds of dimensions to try and get the property into someone's hands. But failing that, we do have a tender process completed to fix the stairs, if that, so we're ready to do that. But we still have to just sort out the ownership issue, and I will find out from our solicitor what the status of that is and report back. But the last time I heard it was yet to be resolved, and there's a whole process through the province that you have to go through to actually own it. What we have done, and I agree it is very unsightly, is the fencing that is around it is to make sure that we don't have a liability issue with somebody falling on the stairs. So that's why the fence was put up about a year ago, just to protect us from that at least.
That fence is very fragile looking. The weeds are coming out. It's really unsightly. It's a standard that I think that we should be adhering to, because we're asking our residents and property owners to do the same. We don't ask them for excuses. We ask them to comply. I think we should be doing the same. I mean, our bylaw would not put up with that if we were a private property owner. I think that's my main thing. And lastly, on December 5th, we welcomed the members from Niagara College to our town prior to a general committee meeting that was chaired by Councillor Thompson. And members of council here, not everyone, and staff here at this table all were having consuming alcohol and dining at Magna. And I would like to know and see the cost of that and how it was paid. So is there any way that I could have that timeline perhaps by next council? Or thank you very much.
Councillor Humphreys? No.
No new business announcements.
Councillor Kim? Councillor Peary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sort of following along Councillor Thompson's comments, but a little bit different. Magna and Lyft have recently announced a partnership, Lyft being the major competitor to Uber. Wondering if you could look into rules and regulations of autonomous vehicles in York Region and whether or not they'd be able to do some testing in town. I recognize that there was a death in Arizona not too recently, but with that said, wondering if it's something that can be tested, considering that their head office is located in Aurora. So just some additional information would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. When Mr. Nadarossi was talking about sorting out the ownership issues with that stretch of land, it reminded me that prior to Mr. Cesario, Mr. Marr was also looking at trying to clarify a lot of those ownerships on the parking lots and on both sides of Yonge Street as well. So I'm not sure if you can just sort of expand upon it and just find out if that's all been sorted out as well, Mr. Nadarossi? Because I know there was a few questions with regards to who owns what on the parking lot. I don't know if it ever got completed because, of course, Mr. Marr went on to another job.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, there is no public service announcement, so do you want to get something in?
That's okay. It's not legal. I'll do it next week.
Okay. I was in the Stems store and winery on Brookland last week. I was just absolutely amazed by the quality of that store, and it brought to mind, and I've mentioned it before, as have other people, about us accepting the lowest bids on things. Mr. CAO, maybe it didn't apply in this case. This was a complicated issue. But is council obligated to accept the lowest bids? Because the lowest bid may not always be in the best, especially when it's something that we're tendering for ourselves. Well, I guess it's always when we're tendering something for ourselves, but it may not be in the best interests of our residents. So can we look at that as a council? Or the next council, but can we put that on our radar?
Certainly, Madam Chair. It's a complicated field, and when you go to a straight sort of hard and fast tender, it becomes very difficult to not accept the winning tender. But when you go to request for proposals, you can introduce other criteria and things that that would allow for some leverage on the part of council to make a decision based on something other than price. And then the only thing you have to weigh in all of that is free trade and all the other regulations that are put upon us, that we don't put rules in place that are seen to be restricting free trade, either across the country or internationally. So it's a complicated thing, but certainly we can review it from a procurement perspective.
Thank you. Could we put more weight on other aspects, on other criteria like references and past performance, etc., and put less on the monetary? Thank you. I believe we are ready for a motion to adjourn. Oops, a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Tom, who's been so good at moving things tonight, is moving it. Who is seconding it? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Thanks to all the staff. Thank you. Oh.